Welcome, weary traveler. You've arrived at the quiet edge of time, where history whispers in candlelight and forgotten footsteps echo through the mist. I'm the drowsy historian, and tonight I'm taking you deep into a world you were never meant to survive. Before we begin, if you enjoy drifting into the past with immersive stories like this one, take a moment to subscribe to the Drowsy Historian. Give this video a like and leave a comment sharing what time period you'd never want to wake up in. It truly helps keep the stories flowing. And if you know someone who'd enjoy a historical journey right before sleep, feel free to share this with them. Now get comfortable. Let the weight of the modern world slip away, because this is not the story of glory or kings. This is the story of forgotten men behind the battlefield, of cold trenches, quiet madness, and the cost of simply making it through the night. This is why you wouldn't last a day in a medieval battlefield camp. Chapter 1. Before the battle. They don't wake you gently. There are no roosters or soft bells in a medieval army camp. It's a boot in the ribs or a shout in your ear, and suddenly you're coughing on the cold morning air, still wrapped in a coarse wool blanket that smells of sweat, wet straw, and mildew. The sun hasn't even cracked the horizon. Someone yells that the Lord's banner has been raised, which means you have less than an hour to pack up, eat something if you're lucky, and join the others for the day's march. You scramble out of your tent, really. It's just a sagging linen sheet, and the frost bites at your toes through your hole-ridden boots. If you had boots, some of the others are barefoot, wrapping rags around their feet, the cloth soaked from the night's dew. The camp is alive in a way that has nothing to do with joy. Carts creak, horses snort and stomp. Metal clinks and clangs as men fumble to fasten belts and adjust chainmail. You smell burning animal fat from someone's miserable attempt at breakfast, and it mixes with the ever-present scent of human waste and rotting food. Nobody has bathed in weeks. You haven't relieved yourself properly in days. The trench latrines overflowed 3 nights ago, and now everyone just squats wherever there's a patch of privacy. Dysentery spreads like wildfire. You hear someone moaning in a corner, cradling their stomach, doubled over, too weak to march. No one will carry him. If he falls behind, he'll be stripped clean by scavengers, animal or human. The command tent is already dismantled. The knight in charge of your battalion rides past, flanked by 2 squires. His armor gleams while yours, if you even have any, is rusted and too big. You catch his eye, but he looks through you like you're a tree or a dog. The nobility ride. You walk. That's how it's always been. You hear one of the squires joke about the cattle herd that follows behind, referring to men like you. You grit your teeth. That boy couldn't lift a sword properly if his life depended on it, but because his father owned land, he gets fed, protected, and obeyed. You get mud in your mouth and a back that will never straighten again. Marching sounds straightforward, but it's a test of survival. The roads are not really roads, just packed dirt scarred by cartwheels and hooves. Mud sucks at your feet with every step. The army stretches for miles, a crawling serpent of people and animals and creaking wagons. You're surrounded by grumbling soldiers, whining children of camp followers, and the sharp slap of the captain's whip when someone dares slow down. Your shoulder burns from the pack strapped across your back, full of supplies, mostly junk, really broken buckles, extra shoes, half a water skin, a dull knife. There's no water, not clean water, at least. You come to a stream, but it's thick with filth and bloated animal carcasses. Some still drink it. They have to. You just try to hold your breath when you cup it to your lips. Someone tells you that the stream had once been the site of a smaller skirmish last week and that the water runs red during sunrise. You can't tell if he's exaggerating, but you smell something metallic in it. It's not all men. Women march too, mostly wives of soldiers or widows who have nowhere else to go. They carry children on their hips, baskets on their backs. One woman collapses beside you, her eyes glazed, arms trembling. She says nothing. She has no one. Someone tells you she lost both her sons in a siege last season and just keeps marching anyway. Like, her feet don't know how to stop. A boy runs past, barefoot and graying, chasing a rat with a stick. You want to warn him? Rats don't play fair. One bite and the fever comes. By midday, you're drenched in sweat. There's no shade, No pause, just the sound of boots slapping the ground and curses echoing over hills. You're told that if you're lucky, you'll reach a way station by nightfall. Rickety wooden checkpoint where a barrel of sour wine waits and a salted meat. Ration might be tossed your way if the supply train hasn't been raided again. If you're unlucky, you'll be ambushed, and no one will come to save you. You're not a knight or a squire or even a crossbowman. You're fodder, and fodder doesn't get remembered. You try not to look at the birds circling overhead. Last time, they followed you for 2 days before feasting on a collapsed rear guard. One man had choked on dry bread, stumbled off the path, and broke his ankle. He tried for hours, begging for someone to carry him, but there was no one. By dawn, the birds were feasting on him. You saw the bones? The real killer isn't always the enemy. It's the exhaustion. It's the rot. It's the creeping realization that your life is so cheap, it doesn't even merit a name on a ledger. The noblemen give stirring speeches about glory and honor, but they don't speak to you. They speak to the banners in the sky and to each other, clinking goblets in the evening while you collapse onto your back in the mud, shaking from fever or hunger or both. You passed a village burned down last week. Smoke still rises from a barn. The well has been poisoned. A child's doll lies in the dirt, blackened and missing an eye. You know what happened here. Everyone does. The army says it was enemy raiders. You know better. You heard the laughter. You saw the blood on your own side's boots. And yet, you keep walking. Because stopping means being left behind. And left behind means death. Or worse, being looted by the very men who slept beside you last night. You start to lose feeling in your legs, not because of cold, but because the pace hasn't let up. Someone jokes about being chased by death, and you laugh too. Not because it's funny, but because it might be true. When the sun dips low, casting a burnt orange glow on the hills, the army finally slows. Not because of mercy, but because the oxen pulling the main supply carts have collapsed. The beasts are massive and brutal, their ribs showing despite the burdens they've carried. One groans pitifully, legs folded beneath its own weight. A soldier drives a dagger through its eye. Not for kindness, but to save time. You're told to help unload the supplies while others set up camp. Again, it's always the same. Clear the area. Remove brush. Dig shallow trenches. No one really knows what they're doing. Someone builds a fire too close to dry grass, and it nearly spreads. Tents are thrown up wherever there's room. And once again, you're told to share yours with a man who hasn't stopped coughing since dawn. You swear you hear something in his lungs rattle like wet parchment. It won't be long before it spreads. Everything spreads here. Rumors, rot, and regret. Dinner, if you can call it that, is a bowl of something thick and gray. It's made from oats or maybe turnip skins boiled so long it could be glue. A hard crust of bread follows, chipped from a communal loaf that's more mold than wheat. There's no wine tonight, no ale. The last keg was stolen 2 nights ago by a deserter. He was caught. They tied him to a cartwheel and broke every bone in his arms and legs. It took an hour. His screams still echo in your mind, more vivid than any priest's sermon. As darkness settles, the camp becomes a strange, heaving thing, half alive, half haunted. You hear voices muttering prayers, some in Latin, some in old peasant dialects. Others sharpen blades, their faces blank as they drag wet stones down steel with mechanical rhythm. You know they're not preparing for tomorrow's skirmish out of honor. They do it because they've seen what happens when you're not ready. Blades that stick, bows that snap, a helmet strap that won't hold. That's what gets you killed. Not some heroic duel, just bad luck, bad tools, and no one to care. You lie down on your back, the ground unforgiving beneath the thin fabric, and try to ignore the groans from nearby tents. A woman is weeping. A man is vomiting. Somewhere, someone is whispering to a crucifix tied around his neck, promising to stop stealing if God just gets him through the week. You're not sure anyone's listening. You tried praying once when your brother died in the first siege. The sky stayed quiet. The night gets colder than you expected. You pull your ragged cloak tighter, but it's like wrapping yourself in wet leaves. You feel everything. Every ache in your joints, every itch from lice, every scratch from nettles along the trail. You hear animals in the trees beyond the camp. Not wolves, those you could handle. These are 2-legged. bandits, enemy scouts, or worse, deserters turned feral. A man who's seen the inside of war and lived sometimes turns darker than the war itself. One time last season, they found a deserters' camp in the woods. Pieces of meat hung from branches like trophies. At first, they thought it was deer. It wasn't. At some point, you drift off. Maybe for an hour, maybe 10 minutes. There's no sunrise to greet you. Just another horn blast, shrill and sharp, announcing a new day. The kind of sound that tells your body it will never truly rest again. You sit up, your limbs aching, your mouth dry, your soul already numb. The camp is alive again. The oxen have been replaced with donkeys. The carts are loaded. The command tent is gone. One man is missing, and no one speaks his name. Either he deserted, died in the woods, or simply couldn't wake up. There's no time to investigate, no moment of mourning. The war doesn't pause for grief. You fall back into the column, another faceless body moving forward through fog and dirt and the weight of uncertainty. A boy beside you sings a tune his mother once sang. His voice is soft, high, almost angelic. It feels wrong here, like hope doesn't belong in the air. You glance up at the banner fluttering ahead. The Lord's family crest, gold lions on red velvet, a noble lineage, proud and ancient. You think of his tent, large, dry, full of maps and polished goblets, and you compare it to your own life. Nothing is fair here. Not food, not warmth, not justice. The hierarchy isn't built on virtue, only blood. Some are born to give orders. Others are born to carry them. And a few unlucky souls are born just to die on roads like this. The caravan passes a field of gallows. 3 bodies hang, twisting slowly in the breeze. You don't ask who they were. Maybe looters, maybe rapists, maybe just hungry. It doesn't matter. You keep your eyes forward. You walk on. The ground beneath your boots is littered with the shattered bones of forgotten men. Their names lost. Their lives traded for a day's march and a promise of coin that may never come. You try not to wonder if you'll be next. What they never tell you before war is that it doesn't start with a battle. It starts here, on these muddy roads in the stinking camps, with the quiet collapse of the soul. By the time you lift a sword on the field, the real war inside you has already begun. Chapter 2. Camp life begins, building the temporary hell. The banner drops again. This time, it's not a call to move, but to stop. A flat stretch of land near a river bend has been chosen for the next temporary encampment. It looks peaceful at first, with birdsong overhead and morning mist drifting between the trees. But you've learned by now that beauty lies. There's no real peace in this place. Just the illusion of it, seconds before chaos returns. Orders are shouted before your boots even hit the earth. Clear the brush. Set the lines. Diggers to the front. No one tells you what the lines are or how they should be spaced. That's reserved for the quartermasters and officers' men who bark instructions, but don't lift a finger to dig. You're handed a spade, bent and half-snapped, and told to carve a ditch around your unit's perimeter. The ground is tough, packed with roots and stones. It takes 3 swings to move anything, and your palms start blistering before the first trench is even knee-deep. There's no coordination, no strategy, just urgency. Every group claims a patch of land and begins hacking, shoveling, driving stakes. You hear someone shout that the enemy is rumored to be only 2 days away. It may be false. It may not. Either way, the fear works better than any whip. Men dig faster. The camp itself grows like a fungus chaotic, sprawling, feeding on desperation. Tents are erected with mismatched poles and patched linen. Some use shields as walls. Others hang blankets between spears. The lucky ones have actual canvas. The rest huddle beneath whatever cover they can find. Mud is already pooling underfoot, thick and black like oil. The river overflowed last week, and the earth hasn't recovered. You try not to think of what happens when the rain returns. It always does. A pit is dug for refuse, then another for latrines. But with no one to supervise, the two are quickly confused. Within hours, the stench is unbearable. Flies buzz, thick as fog. A boy throws up while dumping slop. A nearby soldier laughs until he starts gagging too. A priest walks by, muttering blessings and waving incense. As if a puff of holy smoke could fix 1,000 years of filth, you feel a surge of bitterness. God may be watching, but he certainly isn't helping. Ode is a joke. The supply wagons have arrived, but most of what they carry is hardtack dense. Stale biscuit, so tough it cracks teeth. You're lucky to get a handful. Others resort to boiling leather straps for broth. A horse carcass is dragged to one side of the camp, and a cluster of men begin slicing it open. You can't watch. You cannot watch. It's half rotted, ribs exposed, crawling with flies, but they carve anyway. Hunger silences disgust. As the day wears on, the camp takes shape, not as a place of rest, but as a temporary maze of misery. You learn its rhythms fast. When to queue for water, when to avoid the gambling tents, where to squat if you want privacy for 5 seconds. There's no schedule, just instinct and survival. You hear whispers about a camp whore who's already serviced 24 men since midday. She walks with a limp and a blank stare. No one knows her name. No one asks. At the edge of camp, a group of mercenaries sharpens weapons. They're not part of your lord's force, just hired blades, loyal to coin, not flags. Their armor is mismatched, faces half covered in cloth. You hear one boast about how he once flayed an enemy for sport. The others laugh. You don't. You just keep your eyes down and move on. You don't want their attention. Evening comes and the fires begin to spark. Smoke clings to everything: hair, clothes, lungs. You cough more now than you used to. Everyone does. You sit beside a pit fire with 6 other soldiers, none of whom you really know. One man tells a story about a knight who fell asleep in full armor and drowned in a puddle. No one laughs. Another tells a rumor one of the forward scouts found a field littered with spikes, barely visible in the tall grass. Someone had set a trap for horses. You wonder if it's true. You wonder if you'll step on one tomorrow. Sleep doesn't come easily. There's always something. An argument 3/10 over. A horse breaking its tether. A scream in the dark. Sometimes it's a nightmare. Sometimes it's not. You sleep with a dagger in your hand and your boots on. You don't dare undress anymore. Not after what happened to that boy last week stripped in the night. His throat slit while he snored. No one ever found who did it. Maybe it was one of your own. Maybe it was someone who never left. There's a strange hierarchy that emerges here. Not the official ranks, those still matter, yes, but the invisible pecking order of the camp. The cook gets respect because he controls what little comfort remains. The blacksmith commands awe. He can fix a blade, maybe save your life. But the washerwomen, the servants, the message runners, they're ghosts. No one sees them until they're gone. And when they are, no one asks why. You feel yourself becoming something else, not just tired, not just hungry, but altered, duller, harder. You stop reacting to screams. You don't flinch when a drunk stumbles past you with blood on his shirt. You forget your family's faces. You don't remember the last time you smiled. It's not depression. It's war. And this isn't even the fighting part. Tomorrow, you'll be ordered to build fortifications, wooden palisades, spike barriers, watch platforms. None of it will matter when the enemy comes. But it's what's done. Tradition over logic. Pride over practicality. The camp must look prepared, even if it isn't. Even if the only thing truly ready is the earth beneath your feet. Ready to swallow another generation of forgotten men. The next morning comes with the stink of wet ash and scorched horse dung. There's no true sunrise in a place like this, just a shift from black to gray, as the fog parts reluctantly, revealing yet another day of labor. You're roused not by command, but by the coughing of the man beside you, deep and guttural, hacking up something thick onto the floor of the tent. He wipes his mouth and goes back to sleep, or maybe he doesn't, you don't check. If he doesn't rise with the others, he'll be stepped over. That's how it works now. Today's task is palisade duty. A warning went out last night that scouts spotted movement along the ridgeline north of the camp. Could be wolves, deserters, or advance riders from the enemy. No one knows for sure, but fear travels faster than truth here. You and 30 others are sent to the camp's outer edge with axes, saws, and a wagon full of rough logs. Most of you have never built a defensive structure in your lives. You're told to sharpen the stakes and drive them deep at a slant. The angle's important. But there's no guide, no diagram. Just shouts and corrections and a slap across the face if your line starts to curve. The work is grueling. You're cutting through green wood with blunt tools. Splinters slicing your hands. Sawdust choking your throat. Someone loses a fingertip before no scream. Just a grunt and a bloody rag tied around it. The medic offers no help. He's too busy treating a man who fell from a supply cart and cracked his skull on a rock. There are no painkillers. Just vinegar, cloth, and prayer. Midday brings a brief halt as a knight on horseback arrives to inspect progress. His armor is polished, his beard braided, and his horse shines like it's never walked in mud. He circles your crew once, nods to no one, then gallops away, hooves splattering your face with muck. No words of encouragement. No gratitude. Just distance. You're reminded again of your place, not as a soldier or even a man, but as a tool, blunt and replaceable. Later, as the sun drops behind a wall of black clouds, you catch sight of smoke rising beyond the trees. Another village burned, some whisper. The enemy? Perhaps. Or your own foraging party clearing out locals who refuse to surrender food. No one confirms. No one denies. The war doesn't care about innocence. Only logistics. If you don't take from them, they'll take from you. It's said like a truth passed down through generations, the way a father might teach a son how to sharpen a blade or gut a rabbit. Except now, it's how to justify looting, arson, and worse. You sit by a cook fire that evening beside a boy of no more than 14. His name might be Lucas, or maybe Thomas, you've heard both. He was pressed into service last season after his village was emptied. He carries a sword nearly as tall as he is, and he holds it wrong. You see his hands shake when he eats. When you ask if he's ever seen combat, he says nothing at first. Then, quietly, I watched them hang my uncle. His leg was broken. He couldn't keep up. You want to tell him it will get easier, but you'd be lying. It doesn't. It just gets quieter. The horror seeps in like damp through wool slowly, steadily, until it stains everything. There's no song at night anymore. No one sings around the fires. Not since last week when a small group of men were dragged out after dark for humming a folk tune believed to be associated with rebels. They were flogged in front of the quartermaster's tent. The song had nothing to do with rebellion, but fear reshapes meaning. Silence now is safety. A new set of orders arrives. Half the camp must prepare to move forward at dawn. No reason given. Perhaps a maneuver. Perhaps bait. Either way, men begin packing what little they have: cracked helmets, bent swords, lice-infested blankets. You're told to stay to reinforce the rear perimeter. It should feel like relief. It doesn't. Rear lines are where the wounded crawl back. Rear lines are where the dying moan through the night, begging for water, for mercy, for someone to just listen. You help dig shallow graves just after sunset. The ground is soft now, churned from the week's storms. You work beside a monk who barely speaks, muttering Latin under his breath as he sprinkles each body with water. There are no markers, no names, just pits. Some are soldiers, others are camp followers. One was a baby. No one will remember them, not even you. The grave stench follows you back to your tent and clings to your hands, no matter how much you scrub with sand and moss. Before you sleep, if it can be called that, you hear a familiar voice nearby. It's the man who told that joke on the first day, the one about drowning in a puddle. He's weeping now, quietly, but not enough to be missed. You don't know what happened. Maybe he got word of a dead brother. Maybe it's just too much. You almost say something, but what could you possibly offer? There are no words here, no comfort, just the sharp silence of shared suffering. And so the camp settles into another cycle: work, pain, hunger, sleep, fear. Place where lives disappear beneath the dirt without ever being seen. The tents flap in the cold wind, the torches flicker, and somewhere in the distance, a wolf howls, not out of hunger, but as if mocking what you've become. You think about home, but it feels like a dream someone else had. Your life before this, before the mud, before the death fades more each day. In its place is a growing numbness. Not yet. Not yet. Just a slow, tightening grip around your throat that says, this is normal now. This is your world. And tomorrow it gets worse. Chapter 3, The Stench of War, Disease and Rot in the Camp. You notice it before you open your eyes. The smell. It seeps into your tent before the morning sun, thick as tar, heavy enough to make your stomach tighten. You've grown used to the ordinary stench of the camp sweat, latrines. Old meat, but this is different. Sharper. Sour. You sit up slowly and the taste of it hits the back of your throat. Death, unwashed and unburied. Outside, a group of men are gathered near the edge of the refuse pits. One of the older soldiers, a grizzled man with only 3 teeth and a permanently bent nose, spits into the mud and mutters, "It started." He doesn't say what it is. He doesn't have to. You already know. The camp has been slowly rotting from within, like an apple left in the sun, and now the rot has turned inward. At first, it was a few cases, men complaining of stomach pain, then collapsing into seizures. Some vomited blood. Others started coughing uncontrollably, their tongues swelling purple before their eyes rolled back. The surgeons did what they could, which wasn't much. They drained blood, applied poultices made from moldy herbs, burned incense over the bodies. Nothing helped. One man died mid-prayer, curled up like a dog, his last breath a wheeze of bile. Word spreads that it might be the bloody flux. The soldiers curse. Others whisper plague. No one knows for sure. One of the cooks claims it came from the river water, that dead livestock upstream are poisoning the flow. Another insists it's bad meat spoiled mutton distributed 2 nights ago. You remember eating it, chewing carefully around the green-gray edge. You haven't felt right since. The command tent issues no statement. They never do. A sick soldier is not a soldier worth naming. But the burial pits are dug deeper today. The monks have run out of holy water, and the gravediggers work with cloth tied over their faces, muttering prayers with every shovel of dirt. You help for a while, not because you're ordered to, but because you can't sit still. If you're moving, maybe the sickness can't find you. At mid-morning, a young camp boy, no more than 10, falls to his knees near the cook fire, eyes wide and glassy. He claws at his throat, gasping like a fish pulled from the river, and then topples sideways. A woman screams. The crowd parts. He jerks once, twice, and then lies still. Someone throws a tarp over him, and that's it. No ceremony, no mention. Life moves forward, the machinery of war grinding on. The camp physician, a haggard man with blood-stained sleeves and hollow cheeks, finally steps forward to speak. He warns everyone to boil water to avoid raw meat to keep distance from the sick. But it's already too late. You hear coughing in every tent. You see the telltale red rims around eyes, the trembling hands, the sudden stumbles. The disease is in the mud, in the food, in the air. Worse than the illness is the way it changes people. You see a soldier punch a man unconscious for trying to steal his wine flask, then kick him repeatedly in the ribs until someone drags him away. Another man is found dead in his tent, not from illness, but from a knife wound in the throat. His food stash is missing. When asked, no one saw anything. The camp is cannibalizing itself. You try to clean yourself, wipe your hands with cloth soaked in vinegar, wash your face with rainwater from your upturned shield, but it's hopeless. Every touch feels infected. You watch a woman scrubbing her child's feet with sand, her fingers raw and bleeding, tears streaking down her face. She doesn't stop even when the child begins to cough. The horses are dying too. Some lie down and never rise again. Their bellies swell, legs twitch, eyes roll white. The stable master does what he must, drives a dagger behind their ears. Quick and clean, but even he starts to shake. Horses aren't just animals here. They're food. They're movement. They're the difference between living and dying in battle. And now they're rotting in the mud, attracting crows. That night, the camp smells worse than ever. It's not just the corpses, it's the fear. It clings to everything. A sour scent of sweat, sickness, and despair. Men huddle closer together, even though they know they shouldn't. They whisper legends of entire battalions lost to pestilence, of camps turned into death pits, of nobles fleeing in the night to escape their own men. You almost believe them. You lie awake shivering. You think of home. Of warm bread, clean water, your mother's hands. But the memory feels distant, like it belongs to someone else. You haven't written in weeks. You have nothing to say that wouldn't terrify your family. Alive is no longer something you feel. It's just a status, temporary and fragile. Just before dawn, a priest walks tent to tent with a candle and a bell, offering final blessings. He doesn't say it's because he expects death. He doesn't need to. You watch the way he trembles as he holds the crucifix, the way his mouth barely forms the words. Even faith here is exhausted. As the sun rises, turning the sky from ash to bruised orange, a new wind blows through the camp. It carries the scent of burning flesh. Somewhere, the sick are being cremated, not buried. Not honored, just burned, to stop the spread. You turn your head and cough, and for a terrifying moment, your chest won't stop shaking. You wonder, tomorrow you'll be one of them. You're told to report to latrine duty. Again, it's a punishment, although you haven't done anything wrong. But here, wrong is just another word for visible. The captain had noticed you resting near the cook fire a little too long yesterday. Now you're shoveling human waste into pits barely deep enough to mask the smell. You tie rags around your face and breathe through your mouth, but the stench seeps in anyway. Thick, sweet, nauseating. Worse, there's no fresh earth to cover it. You're just stirring it into the ground, spreading it with each movement of the spade. Flies descend in clouds. Behind you, a man retches, his hands trembling as he leans against a shovel. He's new to the job. You're not. You've done this enough now to understand that sanitation isn't about dignity here, it's about survival. You once saw a pit overflow after a night of rain. It ran downhill, past tents, into a food crate. No one noticed until it was too late. Half a dozen soldiers sick by morning. 2 didn't make it. Nearby, the body piles grow higher. The makeshift mortuary is nothing more than a canvas stretched between 2 poles. Inside are corpses wrapped in wool, in tent cloth, in rags. Some aren't wrapped at all. Their skin has gone a sickly shade of green-blue, lips peeled back, eyes half open. You try not to look. But one face catches you, familiar, a gambler from your tent row. You shared dried pears with him just 3 nights ago. He joked about marrying a noble woman after the war. You remember laughing. Now his mouth is frozen in a silent scream and his hands are curled like claws. The surgeon is overwhelmed. His table, once reserved for stitching wounds, is now an altar to futility. Bowls of leeches sit beside bone saws. Rags soaked in wine double as bandages. There's no anesthesia. The screams are constant. You watch as one man has a leg removed, his comrades holding him down while the surgeon cuts, his saw snagging on bone. They don't scream for long. They either faint or die. You realize the cries that follow are not from the wounded, but from the onlookers, men who know their own time is coming. The fear is no longer hidden. Men carry it on their faces, in their posture. They flinch at shadows, at coughs, at the smell of cooking meat. One soldier refuses to eat anything cooked by another. He boils his water 3 times before drinking. He hasn't spoken in 2 days. Another wears garlic around his neck and rubs his skin with ash. He swears it wards off death. The others mock him at first until he's the only one in his unit who hasn't fallen sick. Then there's the priest, or what's left of him. His sermons have grown frantic, his voice cracking, eyes bloodshot. He rants now, not praise, walking barefoot through the mud, smearing soot on his face, crying out that God has abandoned the camp, that this is a punishment, that the war is not for glory, but penance. Some mock him, others avoid him, a few follow. You're not sure what you believe anymore. You still wear your mother's rosary around your neck, but you haven't touched it in days. The camp starts turning on itself. A rumor spreads that the disease came from one of the washerwomen, a foreigner, they say. She doesn't speak much. You've seen her before, small, wiry, always barefoot, always moving. They say she used herbs no one recognized, that she cursed a soldier who tried to touch her. The same soldier died 2 days later. The story is enough. A group of men drag her from her tent in the night. You hear the beating before you see it. When it's over, they leave her in the mud, unconscious. By morning, she's gone. No one admits to it. No one cares. Discipline breaks down in patches. Some units still maintain order nights, barking commands. Squires cleaning armor, drills in the morning. Others have descended into chaos. Fights over food, stabbings over blankets. One cart of supplies is overturned in night, the contents stolen. The quartermaster threatens execution. The men just laugh. They know he doesn't have the strength left to enforce it. And through it all, the enemy remains unseen. It's easy to forget there's even a war. No arrows fly overhead. No siege towers rise in the distance. Just this rotting camp, this slow descent. Some say the enemy waits for you to die off. That they've surrounded the woods and are watching, counting, waiting until the moment when the camp is too weak to resist. You wonder if that's true or if they're suffering just as badly on the other side of the ridge. One evening, you hear a new sound singing. Not loud, not joyful. Just a soft voice from somewhere near the latrine line. An old melody. A lullaby, maybe. You don't recognize the words, but the tone is familiar, haunting. For a moment, the camp seems to hold its breath. Fires crackle, flies buzz, but no one speaks. Then the song ends, and the silence returns, heavier than before. You lie down at night with a hand pressed to your own chest, just to feel it rise and fall. Just to confirm you're still here, but you don't feel lucky. You feel guilty. Like each breath you take is stolen from someone else. Tomorrow, they say, reinforcements may arrive. Fresh soldiers, new supplies, clean water, hope. But hope, like everything else in this place, is fragile. It smells faintly of rot. And you know better than to trust anything that smells like that. Chapter 4. Camp Hierarchies. Nightly Pride versus Servant Misery. There's an invisible wall inside the camp. It's not made of wood or stone, but it's solid enough to break your spirit if you ever try to cross it. You see it in the way people move. The pace changes when you step closer to the command tents. Servants lower their eyes. Soldiers tighten their posture. And no one speaks unless spoken to, because that's where the knights dwell in a different world, one surrounded by polished shields, velvet banners, and privilege so thick it might as well be armor. Your job today is latrine hauling again. Only this time, you're doing it near the Lord's quarters. The irony doesn't escape you. You, reeking of waste, pass through rows of fine canvas tents where gold-stitched pennants flutter proudly and squires polish swords beneath the watchful gaze of their armored masters. These knights walk with the certainty of men who will never be touched by what you've seen. Their hands are smooth, their tunics clean, their boots dry. You wonder if they've ever dug a grave or held a dying man as he choked on his own blood. You pause to rest by a supply wagon and spot one of the knights young. Lean, with perfect posture, laughing with a group of others. His tabard is spotless. His goblet brims with something red wine, you think, not blood, though here they often look the same. You recognize his squire, too. That boy is only a few years older than your brother would have been, and yet he rides a horse, sleeps on feathered padding, and has never carried his own water. He sees you staring and sneers. You look away? The hierarchy in camp isn't just about rank, it's about worth. Knights dine at tables, even in the field. Their meat is salted, their bread fresh. When they need water, a servant fetches it. When their boots get muddy, someone scrapes them clean. You, on the other hand, are lucky if you eat once a day. You squat in the dirt, eat from a broken bowl, and wash only when the rain gives permission. You've seen men flogged for accidentally touching a noble's mount. One boy tripped over a banner rope and was nearly hanged for sabotage. There are rules, and they're not written for your kind. At midday, there's a summons. Lord Emmerich, the camp's senior knight, wants more help reinforcing his outer perimeter. You and 12 others are chosen, not for your skill, but because you're still breathing. The guards don't explain. They just point. You follow orders. Lord Emmerich's tent is twice the size of any barrack, outfitted with a small iron brazier and 4 guards. His armor is laid out on a wooden rack, gleaming like a relic in a cathedral. It's ceremonial mostly. He rarely wears the full suit, but it must be maintained at all times. His steward, a man named Corvin, supervises your group with a sour expression and a riding crop in hand. He doesn't need to use it, but threat is enough. You're put to work driving stakes, reinforcing earthworks, and carrying sandbags. One of your group is an older man, too slow, too tired. When he drops a sack, Corvin strikes him across the face without hesitation. Blood flies. No one protests. You all just move faster. You're not paid for this. You don't get extra rations. The only reward is that Corvin doesn't look your way again. As the sun sinks behind the hills, you're finally dismissed. You limp back to your row of tents, exhausted, shoulders raw from rope burns. Along the way, you pass a gathering near the knight's quarter. A feast is underway. Laughter echoes. Music plays. A minstrel strums a lute and sings about honor and glory. The irony hits you like a stone. One of the nobles makes a toast. To victory. To steel and courage, he shouts, holding his goblet high. You pass just as he finishes, and a splash of wine lands near your boot. He doesn't notice. You're not even background noise. You're a shadow. A necessary shadow, perhaps, but a shadow nonetheless. Later that night, around the fire, you talk with another laborer, Merrick, a man from the south with a crooked jaw and a laugh like gravel. He tells you about a time during the last campaign when a knight abandoned his squire on the battlefield. Too slow, he says, so the boy was left to be trampled. And yet the knight received a commendation. Said he held the flank. Merrick chuckles bitterly. Funny how stories change when you're the one writing them. You want to laugh too, but your throat's too dry. You think of the boy, of his armor probably too big, of his boots probably too new, of his mouth probably still forming the word wait. The difference between your life and theirs isn't just comfort, it's memory. You will die and no one will remember your name. The knight will die and songs will be written about his sacrifice, even if he fell from his own horse while running away. History isn't kind. It's curated. At the edge of the camp, you see two servants scrubbing blood from a noble's tent flap. You don't ask why. You don't want to know, you just keep walking. You lie down with your face to the earth, your back to the stars. Above you, in their tents, the nobility dream of glory. You dream of waking up with both your hands. And tomorrow you'll do it all again, unseen, unpaid, and forgotten. By dawn, your arms ache from yesterday's labor. You sit up slowly, feeling the cold mud clinging to your cloak. And for a brief moment, you wonder what would happen if you didn't move. If you simply lay there, silent, eyes shut, letting the camp rise and scream around you without lifting a finger. But you know what would happen. You'd be whipped, or worse, replaced. In a place where a dozen men die every day, there's always someone to take your spot. The first sound you hear is metal striking metal, a squire sharpening his knight's longsword. The rhythm is clean, practiced, like music without joy. You're nearby because you were assigned to dig fire pits for the noble circle, a space they've declared off limits to the rest of the army. It's just a patch of ground slightly higher than the rest, but elevation here is more than terrain. It's a symbol. They can see the entire camp from there. But they never come down. The knights are already awake, sipping warmed wine and barking orders at their attendants. They speak of tactics, of lines and flanks and banners, but their words are hollow to your ears. Not because they don't matter, but because they don't apply to you. If a skirmish begins, you'll be part of the meat wall at the front. Your name won't be recorded. If you fall, your weapon will be reclaimed and handed to the next man. But if they fall, there'll be a procession, a speech, maybe even a statue. There's a young noble this morning who's complaining about the cold. He stomps about in furs, demanding his breakfast be heated again. You watch a servant sprint to the fire, nearly slipping on wet grass. When he returns, the boy tastes the broth and spits it out onto the ground. The servant flinches, not at the waste, but at the expression. He'll go without food today. His punishment won't be formal, but it will be felt. Nearby, another knight practices his archery. He aims not at a straw target, but at an old shield propped on a pile of hay. You and another laborer are ordered to retrieve the arrows. One lands close to your head, so close the wind of it parts your hair. You glance up and catch his grin. He wasn't aiming to miss. That grin tells you everything. Your life is a toy here, a passing fancy to men who've never wanted for anything. He motions you forward again. You walk faster. By mid-morning, A fight breaks out between a stable hand and a squire over a misplaced saddle. The squire draws a dagger, slashes the stable hand across the arm. Blood spills. The hand stumbles back, yelling that it wasn't his fault. You believe him, he's diligent, often seen working with cracked fingers and a limp. But the knight the squire serves arrives moments later, listens to 5 words, and has the hand whipped into square. No questions. The squire walks away with a smirk. The hand, barely conscious, is dragged away like spoiled meat. You start to understand that cruelty isn't an accident here. It's a language, a reinforcement of status. Knights punish not to correct, but to remind. You're lesser. You do not matter. And the more brutal the reminder, the more secure their power becomes. That night, you catch sight of something that turns your stomach more than rot ever has. A noble's tent is opened briefly while servants change out his bedding. Inside, a woman sits silently near the corner, eyes blank, wrists bound. She's not a soldier. Not a follower. You recognize the look. She was likely taken from a village burned weeks ago. You say nothing. You keep walking. You try not to feel anything. Because feeling means guilt, and guilt is a weight you can't afford to carry. Later, around the common fire, the men speak in hushed tones. One tells a story of a knight who ordered his servant to fetch water from a cursed stream. The servant refused. The knight laughed and forced him at sword point. The man returned pale, holding a wooden pail, and died 3 days later with black veins across his chest. The knight still drinks from the same stream. Hasn't fallen yet, they say. Maybe evil has preferences. They joke, but there's truth in the tale. Knights can afford to take risks. If they fall ill, 5 more stand in line to protect them. If they stumble, squires catch them. If they die, they're remembered. But you die, and you're buried in a trench, wrapped in whatever scrap they can find. You wonder why more men don't revolt. Why the camp doesn't rise up, outnumbering the nobles 100 to 1. But then you see the division among the commoners. Some dream of being noticed. Some think if they serve well enough, speak softly enough, carry water fast enough, they might be spared. There's no unity, only desperation. And desperation is fertile ground for control. The system isn't broken. It was built this way. Cruelty trickles down like blood from a blade's edge, slow, inevitable, leaving stains that no water can wash away. That night, as you lie beside the dying embers of your fire, you hear a night somewhere laughing. A full, rich, unbothered laugh. You don't know why, and it doesn't matter. What matters is how far away it sounds. Not in distance, in existence. And as you close your eyes, the truth settles in. You're not part of this war. You're part of the cost. If you step just past the final row of soldiers' tents, beyond the perimeter where discipline thins and the banners no longer fly, you'll find a different kind of camp. There are no formations here. No trumpet calls or rank. Just smoke, chaos, and survival. This is the world of the camp followers. It's not on the maps, but it's as real as any battlefield, more so, in some ways. Because here, war is not a cause or a duty. It's a market. You first saw it in glimpses. A line of women washing clothes in the muddy stream, their knuckles red from cold water, faces drawn and quiet. Then a trader with a cart of dented pots, salted meat, candles made of animal fat, and a bucket of spoiled apples he was still charging 2 silver for. Then children barefoot, snot-nosed, climbing over supply crates, chasing rats for fun or food or both. Now you're sent here on errand duty. One of the quartermasters wants extra woolen padding for the Lord's new saddle. You're told the best trader in camp can be found near the back, just past the wagon where the old woman sells mushroom broth. You walk through the makeshift village and feel the strange hum of a world beneath the war, a place ruled not by command, but by necessity. You pass a tent with bright red cloth stitched across the entrance. A woman stands at the flap, leaning on one hip, her dress low at the front, and her eyes heavy with something between boredom and warning. She doesn't speak. She doesn't need to. A man stumbles out behind her, buckling his belt, avoiding your eyes. You don't judge? You've seen the same man weep quietly during latrine duty. You've seen the way the knights laugh at him behind his back. Maybe this is the only place he feels human. The prostitutes are everywhere and nowhere. Some wear bright colors. Others wear mud-stained rags like everyone else. Some are young, others not. Some speak French, some speak no language at all. You don't know their names. Most don't share them. They go by nicknames: Red, Bee, Half-Tooth. They trade in silence and secrets and something more primal than coin. One of them approaches you. She's maybe 17, maybe 30. It's impossible to tell beneath the dirt and fatigue. Her voice is quiet, almost kind. Looking for something? She asks. You shake your head. She smiles without smiling. Everyone is. The traders are another breed. They operate like vultures with coin purses. They move between camps, avoiding the front lines, selling armor scraps, bent arrowheads, and tallow candles that last half a night. Their prices shift by the hour. Yesterday, a pair of boots cost 2 pennies. Today, it's 7 and a promise to deliver 3 buckets of clean water. You ask one for wool padding. He squints at you, spits, and says he sold the last roll to a night squire. But he adds with a wink, I've got goat hair soaked in wine vinegar. Close enough. You buy it. You don't have a choice. And you know full well it'll be your fault if the Lord notices. The people here don't talk about glory or victory. They talk about weather, foot rot, missing children. You hear a woman asking if anyone's seen her husband, tall, with a scar near the mouth, answers to Jern. No one has. No one looks. Another woman mutters that she saw a body matching the description in yesterday's trench. She doesn't say it loud enough to be heard. There are children too, dozens of them. Not soldiers, not servants, just children. Some born here, some dragged across the countryside behind parents with no better option. They beg, sometimes steal. You watch one climb into a supply cart and vanish beneath a tarp. Later, a soldier pulls him out by the arm and slaps him hard across the face. No one intervenes. Not because they agreed, but because there's nothing to be gained from stepping in. Morality is a currency no one can afford. You pause near a makeshift shrine, just a pile of stones with a crude wooden cross stuck in the center. A few wilted flowers lie at the base. Someone has carved the names of 4 people into the wood. Lean, Marais. You pause near a makeshift shrine, just a pile of stones with a crude wooden cross stuck in the center. A few wilted flowers lie at the base. Someone has carved the names of 4 people into the wood. Lean, Marek, Hal, and Baby Joan. The carving is shallow, uneven. You realize the person who made it was likely in a hurry. Or crying? Maybe both? A rag doll sits between the stones, soaked from last night's rain. No one claims it. No one dares touch it either. In a camp like this, even grief becomes territorial. Back near the center of the followers' quarter, a musician plays a soft tune on a bone flute. You think it's a lullaby, but the melody is warped, uncertain. He plays for no one in particular, just letting the notes drift. You watch him sway slightly, eyes closed. His instrument may be worth more than he is. It's probably the only thing he owns. A child sits beside him, head on his shoulder. She can't be more than 6. Her feet are black with dirt. She's asleep. You see a woman sharpening knives on a flat stone. She's older, maybe 50, maybe far less, but aged by the camp. Her eyes are hard, mouth twisted into something that once resembled a smile. You ask her if she knows where to get fresh water. She laughs once and nods to a barrel behind her tent. You hesitate. She adds, I haven't poisoned it. You're not sure if she's joking. You drink anyway. It tastes like metal, but it's cold. That's the strange thing about this place. Despite everything, despite the hunger, the danger, the cruelty, it still functions. There's a system, a code. It's not noble or pure, but it works. There are rules. Don't steal from children. Don't mess with traders. Don't ask where someone got their cloak if it looks too clean. You break those rules, you disappear. Not because someone in armor punishes you, but because the followers take care of their own. Quietly, permanently. The war out there in the hills and forests is abstract to these people. What matters is the next meal, the next warm night, the next person who comes back limping from the front. You overhear 2 women talking about a soldier they knew, someone who promised to take them away from this after the campaign. One says she found his hand near the supply line, still clutching a charm she gave him. She burned it. The charm, not the hand. Some men come here after hours. Soldiers too broken to speak, looking for a drink or a quiet place to stare at a fire without being told to polish something. The camp followers take them in, not always with warmth, but with understanding. One woman runs a tent that serves something like soup. It smells foul, but it's hot. She never asks names, never speaks unless spoken to. Some nights, you see men weeping there, just eating in silence, grateful that no one's watching. The traders make good coin, better than most squires. One sells charms he claims are blessed by a monk in Avignon. You watch him sell 3 to the same knight. The knight never asks why the carving on each is identical, why the holy stamp is just red wax. He just pays and leaves. Faith here is a transaction. So is everything else. And yet, for all their cunning and grit, the followers are the first to die when the camp collapses. When the front retreats, they're abandoned. When the army moves on, they're left behind. When the enemy attacks, they have no line to fall back to. Their tents burn first. Their bodies are found days later, mouths open, eyes full of betrayal. You wonder if they expected better. You wonder if they hoped. Toward evening, smoke rises in the distance. Someone says a supply wagon overturned. Another says it was sabotage. One of the followers jokes it was probably a drunk noble. The laugh spreads dry, bitter, shared. You realize in that moment that these people, despite everything, have more humanity left than most in the upper camp. They laugh. They help. They mourn. You leave with the goat hair padding and a bottle of something that might pass for oil. As you pass the red cloth tent again, you see a woman brushing her daughter's hair. The child winces but stays still. The woman hums. The tune is off-key, broken in places, but it's a lullaby. You pause, not long, just enough to remember what the world sounds like when it tries to be soft. Then you return to the other side of camp, to rules and ranks in silence. You walk past a group of knights dicing beside a fire, shouting at a page who spilled their wine. You hear a whip crack behind you, a reprimand, a punishment, normal sounds. And for a moment, you wonder who the real soldiers are. The ones with blades and banners, or the ones with nothing who still survive anyway. Then the moment passes, and you're just another shadow between the tents again. You return to your side of the camp, but feel like you've crossed a border, like you've passed between two worlds that barely speak the same language. On one side, men dress in steel and argue about tactics they barely understand. On the other, barefoot children sleep under broken carts while their mothers trade cloth for salted turnips. You can't shake the contrast. You can't unsee the dignity that exists outside the rules of rank and war. When you hand the padding to the quartermaster, he doesn't look up, just grunts and tells you to return to your unit. No questions, no thanks, not even a glance. You want to tell him that the traitor cheated you, that the padding is probably goat hair soaked in brine and barely fit for a saddlebag. But you know better, you say nothing. You've learned the cost of speaking up. That night, the wind shifts. The smell of blood is back faint, metallic, riding on the breeze. Someone says there's been a skirmish at the edge of the woods. A few wounded are brought in. You watch your follower, a woman with a swollen ankle and bruised jaw, help carry a man 3 times her size into a surgeon's tent. The knights never notice, but you do. You notice the way her back arches beneath the weight. You notice the way she disappears before anyone can thank her. A few tents away, a group of women are boiling rags and a pot of vinegar and old wine, makeshift bandages. They've done this before, probably dozens of times. One of them hums a song you don't recognize. The melody is simple, almost sweet. It doesn't belong here. It's too soft for the mud, the blood, the rot. But still she hums, as if it might keep the darkness at bay. As if a tune, even a broken one, can still mean something. You think about the structure of this army, formal command, the weight of the banners, the hollow sermons before a march, and you wonder why none of it includes the people who actually keep it alive. The ones who stitch the wounds, bury the dead, feed the hungry. The army pretends it's made of knights and strategy, of divine purpose and honor, But you've seen the truth now. It's built on backs bent under baskets, on hands blistered from firewood, on girls too young to carry water who do it anyway. And the worst part is, they know it. The camp followers know they're invisible. They know they'll never be in the stories. That when the war ends, the songs will be sung of swords, not spoons, of steel, not skin. They know the bards will not ask their names. That history has no space for those who survived instead of conquered. And yet, they stay. They serve. Some even smile. You overhear a woman talking to her son. He wants to be a knight. Says he'll wear red and ride a black horse. She tells him he'll need a sword first and a name that matters. He asks if they can buy one. She hesitates. Says maybe one day. But you can tell by her face, she's already seen what happens to boys who dream in this place. They grow up into meat. Or into monsters. Later, a merchant arrives with news from the south. He brings letters for a few nobles, and for the rest of the camp, a cart of molded cheese and poorly cured fish. The knights ride out to greet him, cloaks snapping in the wind. But it's the followers who surround the cart. They know he brings thread, maybe vinegar, maybe even soap. They press coins into his hand, dirty and worn thin from years of use. He counts carefully, always watching. Here, trust is not a language anyone speaks fluently. You pass a woman selling poultices, bundles of herbs wrapped in cloth. She claims they soothe fevers. You ask if they work. She shrugs. Depends on the fever. You buy one anyway, just to have something to hold in your pocket. Something that feels like hope, even if it isn't. As the sky darkens, the followers gather around fires of their own. No drums, no horns, just quiet. You sit nearby listening. They tell stories not about battles, but about rain. About winters too cold for soup to boil. About babies born between marshes. About lovers lost. Not to swords, but to famine, to despair. You realize, listening to them, that their war started long before this one. And it will keep going after this army is dust. One man's skin dark from years under the sun, hands like gnarled rope, tells a story of a village he once passed through. Said they buried their dead in trees, tying them to high branches so the birds would carry them into the sky. Not because it worked, he says, but because it felt better than dirt. The others nod. One woman says her mother used to burn salt to keep ghosts away. Another says ghosts never leave. They just get quiet when it rains. You don't know what to say, so you just sit. You warm your hands by their fire and feel, for the first time in days, like a person instead of a function. No orders, no whips, no rank. Just breathing. Just being. Eventually, someone passes a skin of wine. You sip. It's bitter, burned, maybe even spoiled, but it's warm. It spreads through your chest like a memory. You close your eyes. Around you, the followers laugh, quietly. They don't laugh at jokes. They laugh at the absurdity of still being alive, of making it through another day. And when you finally stand to leave, someone touches your arm, not to stop you, just to say they saw you. You nod. You don't speak. Words would only weaken the moment. You return to your side of the camp. The silence hits harder now. It's not peace. It's absence. The nobles are asleep. The guards barely notice you pass. You lie down on cold ground, your back aching, your legs stiff. And for the first time, you wonder if the war will end before the people who keep it alive are gone. Ask ChatGPT. They tell you the quartermaster is losing sleep. Not from guilt men like him don't lose sleep over guilt, but from numbers. His scrolls don't add up anymore. The grain counts are short. The salted pork is half rotten. Someone's been skimming rations, but no one knows who. Or maybe everyone does and no one dares speak. Either way, the army's hungry, and the camp is beginning to show it. You notice it first in the eyes. Hollow, focused, watching your bread as much as your face. Men who once shared biscuits now eat in silence. Backs turned, hands shielding their bowls. The jokes around the fires are fewer. The silence is longer. Hunger doesn't shout. It waits, and then it bites. The cooks still try. They boil what's left of the oats into a watery paste. Toss in roots so bitter your tongue curls. Even bones from last week's butchered ox. You see a man gnawing one like it's a feast. He scrapes the marrow out with a splinter, then wraps the bone in cloth and keeps it. You wonder if it's for luck. or for the next boil. You've seen soldiers argue over turnip skins. Not turnips, just the peel. One man tried to trade his blanket for a handful of dried mushrooms. The trader refused. Said he could get 5 times that from the knight's kitchen. And it's true. The nobles still eat. They always do. While you shovel mud and carry logs and patrol the latrine line, they dine on smoked sausage and drink wine. That stings the nose. You saw a lord feed his leftovers to a hound. You'd have killed for those scraps. The disparity isn't just unfair. It's dangerous. Hunger reshapes loyalty. It whispers to you in the dark, tells you that the man next to you has more than he admits, that if you take it, you'll sleep full for one night, that no one will notice, that even if they do, they might understand. You don't listen, not yet. But you know men who have. A thief was caught last night. Someone stole from the supply wagon a wheel of hard cheese and a sack of lentils. He was dragged into the center of camp, bleeding from the lip, clothes torn. He didn't deny it, just stood there, head lowered, arms tied. The captain read a sentence from a leather-bound book, something about order and example. Then the thief's hand was crushed beneath a mallet. The sound it made turned your stomach. But what haunts you more is that no one spoke. No one even turned away. You just watched. Because part of you thought, at least it wasn't me. You're assigned to food line duty the next morning. You stand beside the cook fire, doling out bowls of something that barely qualifies as stew. You're told to serve exact portions. No second scoops, no exceptions. A man tries anyway, says he hasn't eaten in 2 days, that his last ration was all gristle and worm. You meet his eyes. You see the truth. But the officer watching shakes his head. You move the ladle past him. He doesn't argue. Just walks away, shoulders low. You pretend the bowl in your hand isn't heavier than it should be. Later that day, a shipment arrives. 2 ox carts from the south, guarded by 10 grim-faced soldiers. Rumors fly. Flour, onions, dried fish. You're told to help unload it. The first sack you lift splits open. Inside grain, crawling with beetles. The next cart smells like death. One barrel contains eels pickled in something that stings your eyes. Another is filled with meat, gray and slick, wrapped in canvas. The label says, mutton. You're not so sure. But it's food, and it's distributed, not equally. The knights' tents get their share first. You watch squires carry crates past your line, heads high, not even pretending to look ashamed. You know what's inside: cheese wheels, garlic, maybe even dried cherries. They say the Lord's table hasn't missed a course in weeks. That night, a trader is caught selling noble rations to common soldiers. He's beaten, not for the theft, but for cutting in on someone else's corruption. The real thief is never named. You learn fast. The punishment isn't about what's done, it's about who does it. You dream of bread, not fancy bread, not spiced or warm, just something dense, clean, real, something to chew slowly, to hold in both hands. You wake with the taste of mud on your tongue and your stomach clawing at your spine. Someone mentions eating rats. Says he saw a man do it last season. Skinned it, boiled it in ditch water, said it tasted like iron. You laugh, but no one else does. Because they're thinking about it too, the camp starts to change. Men walk slower, eyes sink deeper. Jokes turn meaner. There are more fights. You break one up over a carrot. A single carrot. Both men claimed it. Neither would let go. When it split in half, they nearly killed each other anyway. You carried one to the surgeon with a broken nose. The other limped away and vomited behind a wagon. A dog disappears. No one admits it. But you saw the skin drying near the followers' tents. No one blames them. Hunger has no law. You learn that the smell of food becomes unbearable when you don't have any. That even the rotten onion can make your mouth water. That the sound of someone chewing can drive you mad. You learn that hunger makes cowards out of good men. That it makes good men stop being good. And you learn, worst of all, that the war doesn't need to kill you with arrows. It can starve you to death just as easily. Quietly, without lifting a sword. Ask ChatGPT. You try to ration your own scraps. You chew slower, drink more water to trick your stomach into feeling full. But you're not fooling anyone, not your gut, not your bones, not the men watching you from across the fire. Hunger sits with you now. It breathes beside you, a second shadow. You hear it in your heartbeat when you wake too early. Feel it in your knees when you stand too fast. It's in the dull ache behind your eyes that never leaves anymore. You think of food constantly. Not feasts. Your mind doesn't wander to roasted boar or pies or glazed fruit. You think of stale bread, of hot porridge, of a boiled egg. You think of it like you think of a lost love with a dull longing and a bitterness that burns. The worst part is that everyone else is thinking the same thing. So every gesture or every conversation, every glance becomes loaded with suspicion. Was that a crumb on his collar? Did she just wipe her mouth too quickly? Why is his pack heavier today than yesterday? There are more disappearances. At first, it's subtle. A cook's assistant who doesn't show up for morning prep. A water boy who fails to return from the stream. No one says anything. They just vanish like breath into cold air. Then 2 men are found near the edge of the wood, stabbed, faces down in a pile of leaves. They tried to sneak away, someone says, tried to desert with half a sack of grain. They didn't make it. Their boots were missing, too. Someone probably took them before the bodies were cold. A new rumor spreads. The enemy is starving too. That they're sending scouts just to steal food. That they're killing deer in the woods and boiling tree bark. You don't know if it's true. You don't care. What you do know is that none of this will end soon, and that when it does, it won't be with victory. It'll be with the last man standing over a pile of bones, clutching a crust of bread like a relic. A fight breaks out in the quartermaster's line. A man claims his ration was short. The quartermaster's assistant, a boy maybe 16, insists it was measured properly. The man grabs him by the throat, screaming. 2 guards intervene. They beat the man unconscious. The boy's left crying, holding the ladle like a sword he doesn't know how to use. You're told the man survived. Barely, they took his rations for the week. Called it justice. You hear about a new rule. Anyone caught hoarding food will be flogged. Anyone caught selling noble rations will be hanged. They nail the decree to a post beside the command tent. You see no one read it. Everyone already knows. And yet, the black market thrives. Behind tents, beneath blankets, inside old boots, trades are made. A spoonful of lard for a woolen cap. A turnip for a night with someone's sister. A handful of dried peas for a knife. The cooks start watering the soup even more. One night, it's so thin that the broth runs through your fingers like warm milk. Someone throws their bowl down. Another man curses. You think it's going to break into violence, but no one has the energy. They just sit too tired to fight, too proud to beg. The animals are nearly gone. Horses that fell last week are now butchered in the night. You find a hoof buried near the edge of the camp. Nothing else. No blood. No bones. Just the hoof, gnawed and cracked, like something even the rats had given up on. The dogs are long gone. You think you heard one barking in the forest yesterday, but it could have been anything. A trick of the wind. Or a memory. There's a girl in the followers' quarter who sells something she calls forest stew. No one asks what's in it. It's thick, dark, smoky. You buy a bowl. The meat is stringy. Might be rabbit, might not. You eat every bite. She watches you without speaking. When you're done, she asks if you want another. You ask what it costs. She says, nothing. Not now. You leave quickly. You dream about your mother's kitchen. The way she'd clap flour from her hands. The smell of onions frying. The sound of a kettle whistling. You wake with tears on your cheeks and mud in your mouth. Your stomach cramps so hard it feels like a wound. Then, one morning, a new ration arrives. Flatbread. Burnt on one side, doughy on the other. No one cares. You chew like it's gold. It fills your jaw, slows your thoughts. For a moment, you feel human again. You hear laughter for the first time in days. Not much, but enough to remind you it's possible. But that night you learn the bread was made with spoiled grain. 3 men collapse before dawn. One doesn't wake. The cook insists he didn't know. The quartermaster beats him anyway. Calls it sabotage, calls it treason, calls it anything but what it really is. Desperation. You sit by the fireless pit and watch the embers die. Hunger is no longer a feeling. It's a fact, like mud, like war. like death. It doesn't cry or scream or plead. It just waits. It sits inside your chest and behind your eyes. You've learned to carry it like a shield because you have to. Tomorrow there might be fish from the river. Someone says the traps were reset. You don't believe it, but you say nothing. You nod, you smile, and you try to sleep. Chapter 7. They say something happened in the northern woods. A scout came back shaking. Said he saw lights dancing between the trees blue and green, like ghost fire. No one believes him at first. But then he refuses to sleep, refuses to eat, mutters about faces in the dark. They find him 2 days later with his throat cut and no knife in sight. The men bury him without ceremony, without prayers. You hear one of the captains call it cowardice. But you saw the look in the scout's eyes. That wasn't fear. That was something deeper. Something that doesn't come from a sword pointed at your gut, but from knowing the sword isn't the worst thing waiting for you. The rumors start to spread. You try to ignore them. But every campfire has its story. Someone swears they heard screaming in the woods, long, wet, gurgling screams that didn't sound human. Another says a patrol vanished overnight, their tents found shredded, blood soaking the dirt, but no bodies. No tracks. Just silence. You laugh the first few times you hear it, nervous laughter. But then you notice how the guards double at night, how the captains won't send men out in pairs anymore. Always 3s or 4s. As if one man missing can be explained, but 2 means something else. Superstition has always lived in camps like this. It grows in the filth, the hunger, the silence after battle. But now it has claws. Now it sits beside you while you eat, whispering in your ear that the wind sounds too much like breathing, that the trees don't move the way they used to. You hear a woman in the followers' camp talk about cursed land. Says the war was brought here because the soil demanded blood. Says that long ago, this valley was a graveyard for traitors, and they never forgave the living for forgetting them. The priest walks the rows more often now. Not the mad one who rants about divine punishment, but the quiet one, the one who always smelled faintly of wine and dust. He doesn't preach. He just murmurs, offers last rites to men still breathing. You catch him placing iron nails beside the threshold of his tent. When asked, he says nothing. Just smiles in that tired way you've started to recognize. The look of someone who's already preparing for the worst. You're posted on night watch along the southern path, where the tree line bends in too close, like it's trying to listen. Your partner is a man named Elric. Speaks little. Keeps a knife tied to his wrist with string. He says it's faster than drawing. You believe him. The wind is sharp tonight. Every branch seems to crack with intention. Every owl call feels like a signal. You tell yourself it's nerves, but your grip on the spear tightens anyway. Around midnight, you see something, not clearly. A flicker. Movement just beyond the edge of the torchlight. You raise your weapon. Elric doesn't move, just mutters, "Don't follow it." You ask what he saw. He doesn't answer. His knuckles are white. His jaw clenched. You spend the rest of the shift staring into the dark, praying for dawn. Back at camp, you try to dismiss it. Tell yourself it was a fox, a deer, a trick of light. But then another patrol returns short one man. No one speaks. The others just look hollow, like they left something of themselves behind and didn't get it back. The captain writes the man's name in the ledger and calls it desertion, but you see the look in his eyes. He doesn't believe it either. It starts affecting the soldiers, not just fear, but fatigue. Eyes sunken, faces pale, men sleep in shifts now. Some refuse to sleep at all. One swears he woke with bloody footprints beside his cot. Another claims his tent moved while he was inside it. You hear of a man who tore his own fingernails off during the night. Said he had to get them out before they got to his throat. You think maybe it's just sickness? Stress? The war fraying at the edges, but you've seen sickness before. This is different. This spreads through the silence, through the glances, through the way men flinch at shadows cast by their own fires. The commanders try to fix morale. They hold a feast for the senior ranks. A roast is brought in, somehow still pink in the center. Wine flows. A bard sings a song about a victory from years ago. The soldiers outside the tent aren't invited. You stand guard and hear the laughter echo through the fabric. It sounds like mockery. That night, a man lights a candle and holds it until it burns his hand. Doesn't scream, doesn't move. Just stares into the flame like it might show him something. You ask if he's all right. He smiles, just wanted to see what it felt like. He says, his skin blisters, but he doesn't blink. You stop walking alone after that. You start carrying a knife under your tunic, not for battle, for whatever's out there, or maybe in here. Because the stench of rot is no longer just in the food or the corpses. It's in the air now, in the soil, in the way people speak less and watch more. And something tells you this camp may fall before a single sword is drawn. Chapter 8, you're woken by the sound of a snapped bowstring. It's sharp and fast, like a whip through fog. No one screams. Just silence, then the familiar muttering of curses, the clatter of discarded tools. The archer stares down at his bow, the string hanging limp, his face expressionless. A cracked callus on his thumb bleeds. He presses it to his mouth like a child, then spits. Second one this week, he says. No one replies. The quartermaster is red-faced by midday. Too many complaints, too many broken pieces. The armor coming from the blacksmith's tent is warped. The blades, once solid, now chip on bone. Shields splinter under practice strikes. And the replacement shafts for the spears, too thin, too green-bent, like reeds under pressure. The knights blame the smiths. The smiths blame the supply carts. The supply carts blame the rain. But none of it matters when the enemy doesn't care about your excuses. You're sent to test equipment, not because you're trusted, but because you're expendable. They hand you a helmet with a crooked rim, a dented chest plate, and a sword with a notch big enough to catch a nail. You strike a training dummy. The blade vibrates in your hand like it's ready to fly apart. You try to parry with the shield. The wood splinters. The sergeant sighs and moves on. One man refuses to wear his issued mail. Says it gave his brother a rash that turned to rot. You believe him. You've seen men scratching through the night, bleeding through their tunics, feverish and delirious. Some say the iron is cursed. Others say it's just poorly cleaned. Neither helps. The mail sits in the corner of the tent, untouched, rust creeping like mold across its rings. Arrows arrive next, bundled in wet cloth. The fletching falls apart in your fingers. You toss one into the fire without thinking. The feathers blacken and curl in seconds. One of the sergeants sees and demands to know why you're destroying precious supplies. You offer him the rest of the bundle. He tests one. It snaps under 2 fingers. He doesn't apologize. Just walks away. Morale among the smiths is low. Their fires are weak. They're coal wet. They work through the night, cursing softly, hands blistered from swinging hammers too long without rest. One blacksmith, a man they call Old Baron, stops to rest and never starts again. Found slumped over his anvil, heart stopped, mouth open as if mid-complaint. They cover him with a tarp and clear the tent before the next hammer can fall. Some men try fixing their own gear. They tear strips from tent canvas to reinforce grips, carve branches into spear tips, heat horseshoes into makeshift blades. It works for a time, until a man slices open his thigh trying to sharpen a blade with a stone. The wound festers. He's dead by week's end. You're ordered to assist the quartermaster. It's punishment. Or maybe desperation. Either way, you're handed a list of damaged gear and told to sort it. The pile stretches beyond the tent shields with missing straps. Swords snapped at the hilt. Helmets caved in like skulls after battle. You try to catalog it. It feels like counting failures. One of the knights storms in mid-afternoon, claims his armor buckle snapped mid-mount, demands a replacement. The quartermaster offers him one. It's rusted. He throws it back. It hits you in the chest. Hard. You don't flinch. You don't look up. You've learned not to meet their eyes. Not unless you want more than a bruise. You hear of a duel scheduled between 2 squires. Some petty grievance. One accused the other of theft. The duel is sanctioned because nobles believe suffering builds character. They're given mismatched swords and no armor. One blade bends with the first strike. The other breaks. The fight devolves into fists, then rocks. One boy doesn't get up. They say it was an accident. You know better. At the smithy, one apprentice pours molten metal too fast. It splashes. A man screams. His leg is ruined. They say he'll never walk again. They don't waste supplies on him. They don't even move him. He just lies there, moaning until he passes out. When he wakes, he's quieter, stares at the roof of the tent without blinking. By evening, the rain starts again. You scramble to cover exposed iron, drag leather under canvas, mop up puddles forming inside crates. But it's too late. The rot is already in. You find maggots in the seams of a saddle strap. You burn it. The smoke is thick and greasy. You cough for hours, and all the while, the knights still polish their steel. Their blades gleam. Their mail clinks proudly as they walk. You wonder where they get their gear. Wonder what deals are made. Wonder who bleeds for their shine. Because someone always does. The blacksmith's tents stay hot through the night. You hear hammering long after midnight. Not productive. Desperate. Like someone begging metal to hold together through sheer will. Like someone arguing with fire. And in the morning, the first horns blow. Scouts have spotted movement on the hills. The enemy. Close. Too close. The captains bark orders. Reassign watch rotations. Ready the cavalry. Count helmets. Distribute blades. You're given a spear. The tip is crooked. The shaft is splintered. You run your fingers down the grain and wonder how many hands it's already failed. You say nothing. You grip it tighter. And you pray it holds for at least one more day. You drill with the others at dawn. The order is barked. The formation clumsy. The mud is slick and sticky beneath your boots. And every movement feels like it's happening underwater. 100 men stand in uneven lines. Their weapons a patchwork of salvaged steel, wood, and desperation. Some hold rusted axes that bend with the swing. Others sharpen sticks tied with gut string, masquerading as spears. It's not a battalion, it's a bluff. An army stitched together with lies and rust. You're told to practice shield drills. Your shield isn't even round anymore. It's warped at one edge and splinters when struck. You try to hide in the center of the formation, hoping no officer notices the cracks. Beside you, a boy barely 16 swings his blade wide, loses grip, and watches it fly into the muck. He retrieves it, but now the hilt is loose. You lock eyes with him, he shrugs. That's the new language of the camp, shrugs and silences. Everyone's out of complaints. When the drill ends, a knight walks down the line to inspect the ranks. His armor gleams under the gray light, unscathed by the dirt or the rain. He stops at one man whose chainmail hangs unevenly and delivers a loud, performative rebuke about pride in one's arms. The man nods without answering. You notice he's tied his chainmail shut with twine. You also notice the knight's sword hasn't left its scabbard in over a week. Back at the blacksmith's tent, the forges are dying. They've run out of dry fuel. The wood brought in last night was soaked through. One smith hacks apart a cart axle to feed the flame, ignoring the protests from a supply officer. Another uses the last of the horsehair to bind a blade. You watch a file snap in half mid-stroke. He throws the pieces and walks out. No one follows him. The supply list is a disaster. Helmets short by dozens. Arrows by hundreds. The numbers don't lie, but they don't help either. You're told to patch together whatever you can. So you melt down old nails for arrowheads, strip tent poles for shafts, sew scraps of cloth into makeshift padding. It's like preparing for war with bones and thread. The quartermaster pulls you aside to deliver a message. The command tent needs full armor counts by dusk. You ask if they want the truth or something reassuring. He just stares. You make up the numbers. Everyone does. No one wants to admit that the swords are dulled. The armor doesn't fit. And the men holding them would rather run than fight. Then the sky darkens mid-afternoon. Not from clouds, from ash. A wagon fire breaks out near the storage tents. The leather inside burns slow and thick, sending up smoke that chokes half the rear camp. You hear someone shout that it was sabotage. Another screams it was just carelessness. The truth, as always, is somewhere in between. The fire spreads to a bundle of dried bowstrings. You smell them burn before you see the flames. Dozens are lost. Someone cries. There's a frenzy after that. Everyone grabbing whatever they can. Blades are fought over. Broken halves hoarded. One man is caught hiding a breastplate under his cloak. The punishment is swift, a lash to the back and public shaming. But you notice that after the crowd disperses, another man takes that same breastplate and walks off with it. No one stops him. What's one more thief in a camp where everyone's stealing time? A knight tries to rally the men with a speech. He stands atop a crate, sword drawn, cape fluttering behind him like a stage prop. He speaks of courage and legacy, of God and glory, but his voice cracks halfway through. He stumbles over his words. You realize he's afraid? Maybe more than you? Because he's seen battle, yes, but never with a shield this thin or a sword this dull. And glory is hard to preach when you're wearing fear like a second skin. You spend your evening replacing damaged straps, leather soaked in vinegar to keep the mold out. Your fingers sting with each pull. Across the tent, another man tries to weld a broken helm. It falls apart in his hands. He doesn't curse. Just sweeps the pieces into a pile and moves on to the next. By nightfall, no one is sleeping. The scouts report the enemy is closer than expected. You see fires on the hills, distant, unmoving, watching. The captains shift the watches, tighten patrols, bark orders with false confidence. You're issued a replacement blade. It's shorter than your forearm and chipped at the edge. You test it on a stump. It carves a notch, then wobbles. You keep it anyway. Beside you, Eric ties a dagger to his belt, then another to his ankle. You ask why. He says one blade is never enough. You believe him. He's survived longer than most. That doesn't make him lucky. Just harder to kill. You lie in your tent, blade beside you, armor stacked by your feet, and wonder what you'll do when the line breaks. Not if. When, because deep down, everyone knows this gear won't hold. That the wood will snap, the iron will bend, the leather will tear. And when that happens, it will be fists and teeth and raw panic. And the only thing left to depend on will be how long you can run. You close your eyes just for a moment. You dream of armor that fits, of a sword that cuts, of a camp that isn't a graveyard in waiting, but you wake to the sound of horns. The real ones this time. And it's begun. Chapter 9. The first wave comes in just before sunrise. Not an attack, an arrival. The wounded. Carried, dragged, or stumbled in under their own broken strength. You wake to shouting near the surgeon's tent. Someone is yelling for help, voice cracking, not from fear, but urgency. You stumble outside and see a man limping with half his foot gone. Not severed clean, but crushed bones push through skin like chalk through wet paper. He collapses before anyone catches him. You're pulled into the chaos. Anyone with hands gets handed a job. You're ordered to fetch clean water. There is no clean water. You find a bucket filled with something that might pass for usable and bring it anyway. A boy hands you cloth strips for wrapping. They're not sterile. Nothing here is. But it's all they have. The surgeon is a tall man with blood on his chin and shaking hands. He hasn't slept, you can tell. He moves fast, barking names no one answers to, giving orders no one questions. A man is laid out in front of him with a stomach wound. Deep, not bleeding clean, just oozing something dark. The surgeon cuts away the cloth, pokes a finger into the hole, and mutters, "Rot's already in." He grabs a heated iron and presses it to the wound. The smell is what hits you first, burning meat and something fouler, like spoiled eggs. The man doesn't scream. He's already gone. Another arrives on a makeshift stretcher. Two men carrying him stumble, nearly drop him. His leg is bent backwards. You can't tell if it's broken or gone entirely. The bone is exposed. A tendon flicks with each jolt. The surgeon doesn't even look. "Amputate," he says. You ask who'll hold the man down. The reply, you. You kneel beside him, press your weight on his shoulders. His eyes are wide, unfocused. He's awake, but he's already somewhere else. The saw comes out old, dull, stained with things you don't want to name. The first pull sounds worse than anything you've heard on a battlefield. A wet rip followed by metal grinding bone. The man arches, then slumps. By the time it's over, you've lost feeling in your hands and your stomach is ready to climb out of your throat. They toss the league into a pit, covered by a tarp. Others follow, and an entire pile, like wood chopped and ready for fire. You wonder if they even remember which limb belonged to who. There's a woman beside the tent. She's sobbing into her hands. You think she's a camp follower until you recognize the coat she's holding. Bloodied, too small for her. Probably her husband. Maybe her son? She doesn't move from that spot all day. You're sent to help wash instruments. Not with soap, there is none, but with wine and boiling water. The blades hiss when dipped. You scrub with cloth until your fingers blister. No one thanks you. You don't expect it. The surgeon hands you a needle, a curved one with a jagged tip. Sue, he says. You've never done it. You do it anyway. It's not neat. The thread tears skin more than it binds it. The man you're working on passes out before you finish. You consider it mercy. The smell is the worst. The blood you get used to. The screaming fades into background noise, but the stink of rot, of old wounds reopened, of flesh left too long in heat, it sticks to your tongue. You drink water and still taste it. You close your eyes and still smell it. You meet another assistant, an older man with scars along his forearms. He tells you he used to be a butcher. Says this easier. Animals don't cry, he explains. Then he laughs. It's not cruel, just resigned. Like everything else here. Midday brings a lull. The wounded stop arriving, for now. You help clean the tent, pile blood-soaked cloth into a barrel, pour it over with lye and old ash, burn it. The smoke rises thick and oily. Someone gags behind you. You don't. You sit for a moment on a crate. Your hands are stiff, your sleeves wet. You notice blood on your boot. Not yours. Probably not even from today. You don't clean it. A knight arrives late in the day. Tall, armored, bleeding from under his breastplate. He's helped by two squires, both pale and shaking. When they strip him down, you see why. There's a spike of wood lodged in his side. Deep. The surgeon probes around it, then stops. Too close to the liver. He doesn't remove it. Just bandages around it and gives him wine. The knight screams when touched. Still, he shouts about returning to the line. No one listens. As night falls, the wind changes. Cooler now. But the tent stays hot. The blood never cools here. You stay longer than you planned, helping wherever you're needed. At one point, you hold a boy's head while they try to remove a metal shard from their shoulder. He's 15. Maybe. His eyes meet yours. You lie. You tell him it'll be fine. He believes you. He shouldn't. When you finally leave the tent, your ears are ringing. Your clothes stiff. The world outside feels slower, quieter. The stars are out. You hate them for being so clean. You pass the pit where the limbs were thrown. It's full now, covered in canvas. Someone lit a torch beside it. You wonder if it's for light or to keep animals away. You don't sleep. You don't cry. You just lie in your tent and stare at your hands, still stained, still shaking, still somehow yours. And you wonder how many more they'll ask you to save. How many more they'll let die in pieces. The next morning, before the sun rises, there's already a line outside the surgeon's tent. Not from a fresh wave of wounded. These are the leftovers. The ones who couldn't walk yesterday, the ones who bled silently overnight. They sit hunched in the mud, swaying slightly, their bandages yellowed and stiff. Some whisper prayers, others just stare. If you don't move at all, though their eyes are open, you step around one to avoid touching him, and for a moment you wonder if he's even alive. Inside the tent, the surgeon has a new assistant. The old one, the butcher with the laugh, was found unconscious near the latrines, feverish and soaked in his own sweat. They say he cut his hand cleaning a blade and never dressed the wound. Now his arm is black to the elbow. He didn't scream. He just asked for water. Then stopped asking. You take his place, not because you're qualified, but because no one else volunteered. The surgeon doesn't acknowledge the switch. Just hands you a list of names and a bundle of stained cloth. Your first job is to remove a bandage from a man with a shoulder wound. You unwrap it slowly, carefully. The skin underneath is purple and slick. He hisses through his teeth, clenching his jaw until it pops. When you see the maggots, you try not to gag. You don't succeed. Leave them, the surgeon says. You glance up. He doesn't look away from the leg he's sawing through. They clean the rot better than we can. You retch behind a barrel, then return to work. There's no room to stand anymore. Bodies cover every spare cot, every patch of floor. A woman is giving birth in one corner, alone except for a follower pressing her hand to the mother's stomach. A scream erupts from her throat, piercing, raw. No one reacts. You're all too tired, too used to it. A man in the other corner coughs until he vomits blood. He tries to wipe it up with his sleeve. His sleeve is already soaked. You help stitch a man's side closed. The wound runs from hip to rib, and you can see part of his lung when he breathes. It moves in and out like a bellows. You stitch around it. Not neatly, not quickly, but tight enough to hold. He's conscious the whole time. Doesn't blink. You don't ask his name. You don't want to remember it. Someone collapses while waiting for treatment. He wasn't even wounded. Just tired, maybe starved, maybe too cold for too long. His skin is gray. They move his body out with the others. The grave pit has been widened. You pass it on your way to fetch water. It's deeper now. Too deep to see the bottom. You find the priest there, the quiet one. He's dropping small coins into the open grave, whispering something under his breath. He doesn't look up as you pass. You wonder if he's saying names or apologies. Later, the knights send in one of their own, not wounded sick. Pale, sweating, rambling about voices in his tent and worms under his skin. He strips off his armor and claws at his chest until the surgeon slaps him hard enough to stop him. They bind his wrists and pour wine down his throat. The next morning he's dead. No wound, no explanation. Just gone. You hear whispers of poison, of curses, of something dark crawling through the camp. Men talk about a cloud they saw over the trench black, heavy, unmoving. You didn't see it. But you notice more men wearing charms, bones around necks, cloth symbols sewn into sleeves. You even see a captain muttering a blessing before eating. His hands shake the whole time. The surgeon starts refusing certain cases. Too late, he says. Waste of effort. One man is turned away with a crushed hand. He begs, offers coin, offers food, offers a knife. The surgeon doesn't respond, just tells you to clear the tent. The man is later found dead behind the supply wagon, his blade buried in his own stomach. No one claims the knife. It disappears by dusk. That night, a wagon arrives with medical supplies. Real ones. Bandages, herbs, even a jar of leeches. Everyone crowds around it, desperate, hungry for hope more than medicine. But most of it is claimed by the command tent. The surgeon is handed a small crate. When he opens it, there's a single roll of clean linen and 2 rusting clamps. He says nothing. Just turns and walks back into the tent. You follow him and find a boy, maybe 12, lying on the floor with a head wound. You clean the blood, wrap his skull in what little cloth remains. He grips your hand the whole time. Doesn't say a word. His breath rattles. You stay with him for hours. When he finally slips away, his grip loosens so slowly you barely notice. You leave the cloth in place. It's the cleanest thing he ever touched. By morning, the floor is wet again, not from water. From blood, from sweat, from the things that leak out of dying men when their bodies give up. The air tastes sour. You cover your mouth with a rag. It doesn't help. You see the surgeon crying once, just for a moment, his back to the tent wall, shoulders shaking. Then he wipes his eyes with a bloody sleeve and turns around. Next, he says, just that. And the work continues. You wonder how many more they'll bring. How many more will leave as pieces in the pit. How many more you'll hold as they die without names. And you wonder, when your turn comes, if anyone will hold you. Or if they'll just drag you out with the rest. Quiet, unnoticed, another part of the count. Ask ChatGPT. Chapter 10. They assign you to a scouting unit before you understand what that means. It's not a promotion. It's not even a request. It's an order handed down through 2 layers of shouting. You're handed a dagger with no sheath, a water skin that leaks, and a warning. If you're caught, you weren't supposed to be there. If you speak, your tongue was your own mistake. If you die, make it quick so no one has to come find you. The man leading your unit is called Jaren. Broad shoulders, no nose. just a jagged line where one used to be. They say he chewed it off himself after a siege wound turned black. He walks with a limp and a constant grimace. He speaks like gravel in a sack and never looks you in the eye. You trust him more than the knights. The 5 of you moved before dawn. No torches, no metal. Leather straps and padded steps. You're told to avoid roads, to step where trees grow thickest. That way, if the enemy's scouting too, they won't see you first. It's not comfort. It's survival logic. By the 3rd mile, your legs ache and your hands bleed from thorns you didn't see until they tore you open. You pass the husk of a farmhouse roof caved, stones blackened with fire. Inside, bones still sit at the table. One small, one large. Both too still to be anything but memory. Jaren doesn't stop. No one does. The only words spoken are a whisper to check the well. It's dry. You move on. At the edge of the ridge, Jaren raises a fist. Everyone freezes. He signals for you to crawl forward. You do, belly flat, breath held, feeling every rock press into your ribs. You peer over and see a clearing below. 3 tents. No flags. No fires. But movement. 2 men. Pacing. Not soldiers. No armor. But they carry blades, and their eyes sweep the trees like they know what to fear. You back away slowly. Jaren says nothing. You change direction. The forest thickens. It muffles everything, your steps, your breath, your thoughts. One of the scouts, a younger man with dark hair and a nervous smile, slips on moss and curses. Jaren turns and hits him. Not hard. Just enough to make him remember that silence is survival. The boy nods. Blood runs from his lip. No one stops to check. You find signs of others' horse tracks, old footprints, a discarded cloth strip with a strange symbol stitched in green thread. Not your colors, not anyone's you recognize. Jaren pockets it. You keep moving. At night, you don't make camp. Just drop wherever it's driest. No fires, no voices. You sleep sitting, one eye open, dagger in hand. In the distance, you hear something scream. Not a man. Not an animal either. Something wrong. Something that cuts through the trees like a cold wind. No one mentions it in the morning. The second day, the trail grows colder. You're told to split. 2 go north, 2 circle west. You and Jaren head east, hugging the edge of a swamp. The air is thick and wet. Every step sucks at your boots. You see movement in the water ripples, bubbles, things you don't name. Jaren marks a tree with a notch from his knife. You ask why? He says it's so the trees know you're watching back. Midday, you spot smoke in the far distance. Jaren squints, raises his nose like he's smelling it. He nods once. You circle wide, keeping the wind at your back. As you move, you pass a man's body slumped against a tree. No blood, no wounds. Just eyes open and mouth wide, like something was pulled from him. Jaren closes the eyes without a word. You find a hidden post an hour later. It's buried under brush, just a hole in the ground with a thatched roof. Inside, dried rations, maps, and a torn banner. You don't recognize the crest. Neither does Jaren. He takes the maps. You take a bite of the rations. Hard as stone, tastes like dirt and salt. Still, it's more than you've had in days. Before dusk, you see a patrol. 3 men, armed, not yours. Not from your camp. Their boots are clean. Their uniforms too neat. Jaren pulls you down behind a fallen log. One man laughs. His voice carries. It's the kind of laugh you don't forget. Loud. Too loud for someone walking so close to death. They pass. You don't move until you can't hear them anymore. That night, you find the other scouts. All but one. The boy who slipped is missing. The one with the nervous smile. Jaren doesn't ask. Just says, "Don't mention him when we get back." You realize that names only matter if you survive. You walk the return trail in silence, avoiding the same spots, stepping where you stepped before. When you cross back into camp, no one cheers. No one greets you. A soldier records your names, looks over the maps, and waves you off. The information will be passed up. Someone will pretend it came from one of the officers. Maybe the knight who hasn't left his tent in 3 days. The credit never flows down. That night, you clean your dagger. You wash your hands. You sleep for the first time in days with both eyes shut. But in your dream, you're still crawling, and something is crawling after you. Ask ChatGPT. The next day, you're summoned to a small tent near the center of camp. Not the command tent, smaller, darker, guarded. 2 men with crossbows stand at the entrance, neither looking at you. You hesitate for a second before stepping inside, unsure if this is reward or reprimand. Inside, it's colder. Candlelight flickers off a wall covered in maps and parchment. A man sits behind the table. Sharp cheekbones, ringless hands, no armor. He's not a soldier. He doesn't smile. He doesn't ask you to sit, just motions for you to approach. Your report, he says, voice even. Jaren had warned you about him. They call him the Listener. Not his real name, of course. He collects whispers about the enemy, about your own commanders, about who stole bread and who plans to run. He reads men the way others read books. You speak carefully, repeating what you saw. The tents, the patrol, the dead man by the tree. He never interrupts, never writes, just nods once when you finish. Then he asks the one question you didn't expect. Did you feel watched? You hesitate, just a beat. Then you say yes. Because the truth is you did, not by people, by something else. Something that waited between the trees without eyes or name. The Listener doesn't flinch. He nods again. Others have said the same. He waves you out. That's it. No debrief, no thanks. But before you leave, he adds, you'll be sent again. Soon. It's not a threat, not a choice. You nod and walk out, the weight in your gut heavier than it was on the trail. Word spreads fast in camp. Everyone knows something is wrong, but no one agrees on what. Some say scouts vanished because the enemy has new tactics, traps, poisons, dark arts. Others whisper that our own side is thinning the ranks. That those who know too much or too little or just at the wrong time are being removed. You start watching what you say, who you eat with. Even how long you look at someone. The boy who used to deliver messages between tents is found dead near the trench. No wounds, just gone, like his breath stopped mid-step. The official word is that he was sick. But you saw him yesterday, running, laughing. No one believes it, but no one argues. Not out loud. One night, Jaren comes to your tent. He doesn't knock. Just pulls the flap open and ducks in like he's done it 100 times. He tosses a bag on the ground, bread, dried meat, something wrapped in cloth that smells like herbs. Eat, rest. You'll need it, he says. You ask if we're being sent out again. He nods. Tomorrow, North Ridge. 3 miles out. He sits for a while, chewing without talking. Finally, he says, you remember the 3 in the clearing. You nod. One of them was ours. That freezes you. You hadn't looked close. Hadn't recognized the faces. But Jaren says one was an old scout. Went missing 2 weeks ago. Either they turned or they were turned, he says. Doesn't matter. Same end. You sleep badly that night. Every rustle of wind outside your tent sounds like breathing. Every flicker of candlelight looks like movement. When dawn comes, it's almost a relief. The second scouting trip is shorter. Just you, Jaren, and one other Toma, a pale man with twitchy eyes and an old wound across his scalp. You don't ask what caused it. You march east this time, avoiding known trails, moving low and fast. The tension hangs like smoke. Jaren's hand never leaves the hilt of his knife. You find tracks within an hour. Heavy boot prints deeper than a man's normal step. Fresh. You follow them until you reach a stream. On the far side, a torn cloak hangs from a branch. Red cloth, lined with gold. Not yours. Not the enemy's either. Toma mutters something and spits. You cross the stream. The ground there smells like ash. In a small grove, you find something else, a wooden idol nailed to a tree. Twisted, crude, painted in dried blood. Around it, bones arranged in a circle. Not animal, human, small. Jaren orders it burned. You help gather wood, but Toma refuses to touch it. Let them have their gods, he mutters. His voice shakes. You wonder what he's seen. That night, you don't sleep at all. You sit with your back to a tree, blade across your lap, watching shadows move through the underbrush. Jaren takes first watch. Toma second. When it's your turn, Jaren shakes you awake but doesn't speak. Just points to the woods. Something moved, he says. You hold your breath for nearly an hour. Nothing comes. You return the next day with black rings under your eyes and dried blood on your boots. No one stops you at the gate. You hand off what you found, a strip of cloth, a crude map scratched onto bark, a whispered suspicion about a traitor among the followers. The man who takes it doesn't look at you. You feel like a ghost returning to a place you no longer belong. In the mess tent, people avoid your table. Not with cruelty, just fear. Scouts return marked, different. They speak less. Sleep light. Wake screaming. One scout tries to stab a priest mid-sermon. He misses. They drag him away in chains. No one asks what he saw. Jaren doesn't show up that night? Or the next? You ask around. No one's seen him. His tent is empty, gear still inside. One man says he left early on a solo mission. Another swears he was taken in the night. No one knows for sure. You check the edge of camp every evening. Nothing. Soon after, the listener calls for you again. His tent feels colder than before. He gestures to a scroll on the table. We need eyes south, he says, closer to the river. You hesitate. Then nod, because if you say no, you'll vanish anyway. And if you say yes, at least the shadows you walk into will be ones you've chosen. Ask ChatGPT. Chapter 11. They built a small chapel on the far edge of camp. Not a real one, just wooden beams lashed together with leather cord. Draped in faded cloth and marked with a crooked iron cross. The roof leaks, the floor is mud. But still, every morning, men shuffle in. Not many. Just the ones who remember what prayer used to feel like. You go once, just to see. The priest stands in the center, hands trembling as he turns pages of a book that's too worn to read. His voice is hoarse, the words slipping out like dried leaves caught in wind. No one bows. No one sings. They just listen. Or pretend to. The priest's name is Father Sinedric. Once a bishop's aide, they say, sent to war by decree. You've never seen anyone look so haunted while speaking of salvation? He doesn't speak of victory, only of survival and the cost of grace. Faith, he says in a voice that barely rises above breath, is what you hold when nothing else holds you. No one claps. No one nods. They just leave when it's over, quieter than when they came. But people still come for blessings, for forgiveness, for anything. One man asks the priest to bless his sword. Another wants his armor sprinkled with holy water. A third begs for a prayer over the letter he's written to his mother, in case it's the last she sees. The priest does it all, not with power, but with exhaustion. You start to wonder if he's giving away pieces of himself each time. You return one evening and see the priest outside the chapel, digging. His hands are bare. The soil is wet. He doesn't look up as you approach. You ask if he needs help. He nods once. You dig alongside him, turning mud until your arms ache. Finally, you ask who it's for. For the one no one will name, he replies. Even the lost need ground. You gonna ask more? That night, a man is found screaming in the chapel, on his knees, clawing at the altar like it wronged him. He keeps shouting the same word, why, over and over until he collapses. They carry him away. You never see him again. The next day, Father Sinedric doesn't speak during morning prayers. He stands, opens his mouth, but no sound comes. His hands shake and he drops the book. No one moves to pick it up. When he finally walks out, the silence follows him. The rumors spread fast. Some say he's cursed. Others say he's seen something that stole his voice. One soldier claims he found Sinedric in the woods whispering into a fire. Another says he buried something behind the chapel and won't let anyone near it. You don't believe all of it. But you don't doubt something's changed. You start noticing strange offerings at the altar. Teeth, pieces of hair, coins with markings you don't recognize. One morning, there's a crow's foot tied in red twine. No one claims it. No one removes it. The priest just bows and lights a candle beside it. You feel the shift in the air. The way faith mutates under pressure. You begin to hear of battlefield rites, rituals not sanctioned by the church. A knight orders his squire to cut his hand before each battle, lets the blood drip onto his blade. A captain carries a bone charm around his neck, insists it belonged to a saint, though no one's heard of the name he mutters. In the trenches, some soldiers chant before dawn, not prayers, but something older, low and rhythmic. You ask what it means. They tell you it's to keep the darkness away, not the enemy. Something worse. One evening you find a group huddled around a small fire, heads bowed, chanting in unison. At the center, a young boy, pale and wide-eyed, sits trembling. You ask what's happening. One man says it's a cleansing, that the boy saw shadows in the woods and hasn't slept since. You step closer, but they block your way. He has to pass through it, one says. You leave before the fire goes out. Sinedric starts preaching again, but his sermons change. No longer about redemption or salvation. Now it's endurance. Now it's silence. There will come a time, he says, when nothing answers you. Pray anyway. Not because it changes the world, but because it might change you. You notice he no longer blesses weapons, only wounds. When a horse is struck by lightning during a storm, men take it as a sign. Some say the heavens are angry. Others say the enemy has cursed the sky. A few kneel beside the smoldering corpse, touching its burned mane like it's sacred. You keep your distance. The next time you visit the chapel, it's different. Someone's painted the walls with symbols, circles, inside circles, spirals, thorns. The cross is gone, replaced by a bundle of black feathers tied with iron wire. You ask Sinedric about it. He only says the cross still stands, just not where you can see. The army doesn't interfere. The commanders know better than to fight belief. Let the men chant. Let them burn herbs and mark their tents with ash. As long as they march, no one cares what gods they call. You realize that faith isn't about truth out here. It's about fear, about control, about having something to look at when the sky stays black. That night, you dream of the altar, but it's buried in earth, only the candlelight visible through cracks in the dirt. Something breathes beneath it, not fast, slow, steady, as if waiting for someone to listen. When you wake, your mouth tastes like ash, and outside your tent, the chapel is silent again. Ask ChatGPT. In the days that follow, the chapel becomes more than just a place to pray, it becomes something else, a threshold, a line some men cross and never come back the same. You start hearing stories, not just whispered suspicions, but full accounts of rituals performed under moonlight, of strange chants echoing long after the priest has gone, of figures kneeling alone with eyes closed but mouths still moving. Some men swear the candles burn without flame. Others claim they've heard names whispered that were never spoken aloud. Father Sinedric changes too. He begins wearing black instead of white. Not a robe, just a rough cloak drawn tight across his shoulders. His eyes, once distant, now stare directly through anyone who speaks to him. When you approach him one afternoon with a bloodied friend on your shoulder, he doesn't even blink. Just lays hands on the wound, murmurs something in a tongue you don't recognize, and walks away. The wound stops bleeding, but the man doesn't speak again for 2 days. You begin to notice men going to the chapel not for comfort, but to make bargains. You hear one soldier offering the priest a silver ring in exchange for the safety of his brother. Another carves something into his own arm before laying it on the altar. When you try to confront them, they laugh. The priest listens, they say, even if no one else does. But not all the rituals are bloodless. One night, you follow a group of men into the woods behind the chapel. They carry torches and a wooden box. You stay back, hidden behind brush. They stop at a clearing, dig a shallow hole, and bury the box. Before covering it, they all spit into it, one by one. You never see what was inside. One of them whispers, "This is the pact." Another answers, "Let him wake only when we fall." You tell no one. The camp doesn't collapse overnight. But you feel it slipping, a slow unraveling. The commanders argue more. Food supplies vanish quicker. Morale dips, then disappears. Men don't look each other in the eye anymore. Trust is a thing of the past. The chapel remains full, but the faces inside it are gaunt, sunken, desperate. They're not praying. They're pleading. A week later, the sky darkens early. The sun vanishes behind thick, black clouds. not storm clouds, too quiet, too still. The air becomes heavy, not just humid, but charged, like the space before lightning, but without the flash. The chapel bell rings without being touched. 3 times. Then silence. No one speaks. You feel something shift beneath your feet, a tension rising from the ground. That night, something moves through camp. Not a man. Not a beast. No one sees it directly. But the tents nearest the chapel are torn, the earth dug up in strange patterns. A squire is found with his hands blistered and a symbol burned into his chest. When asked who did it, he mutters a name no one recognizes, then bites off his own tongue before anyone can stop him. The commanders declare a curfew. No one's allowed out of tents after sundown, but people ignore it. Some say that danger isn't in the dark anymore, it's already here. Inside, beneath. The priest stops holding morning prayer. Instead, he lights 7 candles at night, placing them in a circle, each representing something he never names. He tells no one to join. But still men gather, just to watch, to witness. You do too. Even when it makes your skin crawl, you try to talk to him once more. Ask him what's happening. What this camp has become. He looks at you and says, the gods of war were never silent. We just forgot how to hear them. You ask if he still serves the same god. He smiles, not kindly, not cruelly, just emptily. Which one do you mean? Soon, the dead begin to return, not as walking corpses, but as memory. You see their faces in the smoke, hear their names in the wind. The boy who died in the chapel, the man who screamed at the altar, the scout who vanished in the woods. They whisper at the edge of your thoughts, not calling, but watching. You dream of them standing at the edge of your tent, unmoving, eyes full of silence. Then the priest stops appearing altogether. The chapel door is barred. The candles remain lit, but no one tends them. The air around it grows cold, even in daylight. A night orders the door broken. Inside, nothing is there. No priest, no offerings, no altar, just the remains of a circle etched into the floor. Wet, as if drawn in blood. No one cleans it. They seal the door again. Pretend nothing happened. Some begin building new shrines around the camp. Small ones, made of stone, bone, and iron. Hidden in corners, behind trees, beneath wagon wheels. Each one different, each one terrifying. One has a baby's tooth in the center. Another holds a scrap of human skin stretched tight across wood. No one claims responsibility. No one dares remove them. You wonder if the priest was ever really just a priest. Or if he was the first to listen and you were all too deaf to hear what he heard. Maybe he didn't vanish. Maybe he was claimed. After all, you think every god needs a mouthpiece. And war always finds its own. The battlefield doesn't need banners or prayers. It needs believers. Devotees willing to kneel in the mud and whisper into the void. Not for victory. Not even for survival. But to be seen. To be spared. And so, like the others, you start to pray again, not because you believe, but because something is listening. Ask ChatGPT. Chapter 12. The siege doesn't begin with a charge or a horn blast. It begins with absence. One day, you wake to silence beyond the camp walls. No birds, no scouts returning, no enemy seen for miles. Then the order comes. Dig in. You're told the enemy has fortified a town just over the hill, a walled keep, surrounded by farmland now reduced to mud. You're to hold the line, prevent escape, starve them out. You've never seen a siege up close. You expect fire, ladders, battering rams. Instead, you're handed a shovel and told to dig trenches, wide ones, deep, enough to swallow horses if needed. You spend hours each day in the dirt, carving channels that snake around the perimeter of your camp like scars. Your hands blister, the mud cakes in your teeth. The smell of damp soil never leaves your nostrils. The command tent sets up maps. You're shown distances, how long it would take to run to the enemy gate, how far their archers can fire, how many paces to their granary tower. Everything is measured in lives. You learn quickly that the goal isn't conquest, it's containment. Bleed them slowly. Let hunger do the work. The air changes within days. The wind that once carried smoke and wood fire now carries rot, faint at first, then thick. The stench of spoiled grain, of rotting meat, of waste piled too high within the keep's walls. You hear that disease has already taken hold inside. Fever, cough, children dying faster than the elderly. Still, no white flag. And no parley. Your own camp feels it too. Rats flood the trenches, chewing through bags, biting men in their sleep. They move in swarms, eyes glassy, bodies bloated. You're told not to kill them too many, too fast. Poison doesn't work. Traps fail. You watch one crawl across a man's chest as he sleeps. He doesn't even stir. Supply wagons stop arriving. The roads behind you are cut. What little food comes in is stale, hard, sometimes moldy. A soldier breaks his tooth on a biscuit and is mocked until he vomits blood 3 days later. Infection. He dies with half a jaw. The gravediggers grow busier. Tensions rise. Fights break out over scraps. One man hoards onions. Another is caught watering down wine. Punishments grow harsher. A thief has his fingers crushed under a rock. Not cut crushed. Slowly, until they're flattened and black. You hear the screaming through the night. The days drag. The nights stretch longer than before. Fog clings to the trees, hiding shapes that may or may not be real. You think you see someone walking between the lines. You call out. No reply. Just footsteps fading. You stop looking after the third time. Arrows fly occasionally. Not volleys, just single shafts loosed from the enemy walls, landing in mud or flesh. One sticks into the side of a cookpot during breakfast. Another catches a man in the throat while relieving himself. There's never a pattern. Just reminders. They're still watching. You hear stories from deserters, starving men from the enemy side who climb over in the dark, teeth chattering, eyes wide. They don't speak, not at first. Just collapse and weep. One tells of mothers boiling leather belts. Another says they've begun rationing water by the cupful. Still, no surrender. You wonder how long they'll last. You wonder how long you will. Soon the sickness spreads. Not from battle wounds, but from within. Vomiting, diarrhea, rashes that blister and peel. The latrines overflow. The air near the trenchlands becomes so foul you gag walking past. The priest, or whatever he was, is still missing. No one steps into his place. Men pray silently, now head bowed over tin bowls, lips moving with no sound. Then the siege engines arrive. You're told they're for show. Psychological warfare. Massive wooden towers hauled from distant towns, rolled into place just close enough to be seen. The enemy watches them rise from their walls. Some shout, some shoot arrows, most just stare. The towers stay still. No attack is launched. Just the looming threat of one. At night, drums beat from inside the keep. No rhythm. Just dull thuds, too slow to march, too fast to sleep through. You ask what it means. No one knows. The sound burrows into your bones. You help build a palisade closer to their wall. Closer than the trench line. You carry sharpened stakes, drive them into frozen ground with bare hands. Every movement is watched. You feel eyes on you from the keep's towers. You look up once. You swear you see a child, hollow-eyed, mouth pressed to the bars. No one believes you. Winter inches closer. The first frost arrives with no warning. Water buckets freeze. Bread turns to stone. Fires become sacred, hoarded like gold. One night, your fire goes out and you can't relight it. You huddle with others, bodies pressed so tight you can't move. Someone dies in their sleep. No one notices until morning. The siege continues. No end in sight, no charge, no retreat. Just the slow, gnawing teeth of time. You begin to understand why sieges were feared more than battles. Death in war comes with honor. Death in siege comes with silence, with bloated bellies and eyes turned to the sky. You start to hear whispers, not from the enemy, from your own, men wondering if it's worth it. If you should turn on the commanders, if you should abandon the trenches and head east into the forest and never return. You say nothing, but you listen. And every night you dream of a wall, high, unbreakable, and behind it, 1,000 hands clawing for light. By the 4th week of siege, hunger becomes your closest companion. It shadows you everywhere. In the trenches, on watch, even in sleep, Your body begins to betray itself, muscle gone soft, thoughts drifting, hands too slow to catch a falling blade. The dryness in your mouth never leaves. You dream of apples. Just one. Red. Unbruised. The weight of it heavy in your palm. But when you wake, your fingers grasp only dirt. The ration lines grow longer. The food grows smaller. A quarter loaf here, a ladle of something gray there. You don't ask what's in the stew anymore. No one does. You know the cook's dog hasn't been seen in days? You also know he stopped smiling around the same time. One morning, you spot a man chewing something behind a tent. You think it's dried meat until you notice the color. Too dark. Too sinewed. You don't confront him. Just turn away. You understand. You're not sure you wouldn't do the same. Deserters begin to reappear, not from the enemy side, but your own. Men who had vanished into the woods now crawl back to camp on swollen feet, eyes sunken, stomachs caved in. One of them claims he saw something in the forest. A house lit by candles where no house should be. He says the light followed him for miles. They laugh at him until he stops laughing himself. Then he dies that night, muttering in his sleep. The enemy remains silent, no calls for truce, no sally. Just those same walls, stained darker now, and those damn drums. One night, the beating changes. Faster. Urgent. It doesn't stop until morning. The next day, a head is tossed over the wall. Not one of yours. A child's. The mouth is sewn shut with silver thread. You bury it, but the image stays. The camp begins turning on itself. A knight is found dead in his tent, throat slit, chest carved with a spiral. No valuables taken, just blood, pooled into a basin. Ritual, some say. Others claim madness. You hear the captains argue. One wants to retaliate. Another insists it's internal. A third is silent the entire time, staring at the map like it might bleed. You're assigned night watch at the east perimeter nearest to the latrine ditches and furthest from command. The stench is unbearable. The ground is slick with filth. You hear things in the dark, not voices, but clicks, shifts, breathing that stops when you look. You try to focus, fail. Something moves beyond the trench. You aim your bow. Nothing answers. But in the morning, footprints are found. Bare, child-sized. Someone paints a symbol onto a supply cart. An eye, wide and crying. No one admits to it. No one removes it. You pass it every day, and each time the paint seems darker, as though wet again. You stop looking after the fourth day. The chapel remains sealed. The candles never go out. But people begin kneeling outside the door again, heads low, whispering prayers they've invented from scratch. You see a woman cutting her palm and pressing it to the wood. When you ask why, she says she had a dream, that the chapel is listening, that it needs to be fed. The siege engines move, not toward the enemy, but closer to the camp. No one ordered it. The logs roll without hands. Or so they say. You check the chains yourself. They're broken, snapped clean, not rusted. You try to reason with it. Weight shift. But when you look at the grooves in the mud, they lead away from the towers, not toward them. Then the deaths begin anew, not from arrows or plague. From inside, a cook dies and his sleep heart stopped, eyes open. A guard falls from the watchtower and breaks his neck. A child suffocates in her blankets, though no one had seen her for 2 days. The commanders call for order. The troops give them silence. One afternoon, the air grows thick. You hear buzzing flies, but not from the latrines. It's coming from the sky. You look up. A black cloud moves across the camp. Not birds, not rain. Insects. Swarming so thick they blot out the sun. They don't bite. They just hover, humming like a low chant. And then, as fast as they came, they vanish. That night, the siege breaks, but not in battle. The gates open slowly, without sound. One soldier, half-starved, crawls from the enemy side. His hands are gone. Earned or cut, you can't tell. His eyes are white. Not blind, just wrong. He whispers, "Gone. All gone." Before collapsing, you surround the gate. Torches raised. No one inside moves. You enter. The smell hits first. Not death emptiness. Rooms gutted. Walls scorched. No bodies. No blood. Just bones, neatly stacked in piles. A table set for a feast. untouched. A throne room where all the chairs face the wrong way. At the center, a mirror cracked, reflecting nothing. You find writings on the wall, in mud, in blood, in languages no one reads, circles within circles, names you've never heard. At the very back of the keep, in a room without windows, a cradle sits. Inside, a helmet rests, covered in teeth. You leave. No one speaks of it again. The commanders declare victory. Trumpets sound, flags are raised, but no one cheers. The men pack their things in silence. Some burn their tents before leaving. Others leave their weapons behind. As you march away, the chapel door opens behind you. But no one turns around. Chapter 13. They call it a victory. The commanders ride at the front of the column, heads high, banners fluttering. Trumpeters sound blasts that echo through the broken woods. But behind them, the soldiers march hollow, not from injury, from absence. From whatever they left behind in that keep, something that followed them out, not with footsteps, but with silence. You walk with the others, boots dragging through churned up earth, past dead trees and dried rivers. The world feels faded. Colorless. Every mile farther from the battlefield feels like a step into a world you no longer belong in. Even the air smells wrong cleaner, but strange. Like it forgot how to hold the weight of what you've breathed for months. No one sings. No one drinks. Rations continue, but only out of habit. Men chew without tasting. They sleep without rest. You start to notice that no one looks behind them anymore. Not even when something cracks in the woods. Not even when names are whispered in the night. Your unit is given quarters in a half-ruined village, one of the last before winter closes the roads. Stone huts with thatched roofs barely intact. Fires struggle against the wind. You're told you'll rest here until further orders. Rest, as if the war has a pause button. The villagers are gone. Not fled gone. Dishes still on tables. Beds still made, but no voices. No footprints. You ask where they went. No one knows. Some say plague. Others say conscription. You don't believe either. You find a room with a doll sitting perfectly upright on a stool, staring at the door. You leave it untouched. The first night, a man goes missing, one of your unit. Quiet, kept to himself, gone without sound, without struggle. His bed still warm, his boots still there. You check the forest. Nothing. They say maybe he ran, but you know what running looks like. This isn't it. You volunteer for patrol. Better to move than think. You walk the perimeter, boots crunching frost, fingers numb. On the third night, you see lights in the trees. Not fire, lanterns, maybe. But they float too smooth, too slow. You follow. For a moment, you hear laughter. Familiar, from a voice long dead. You stop. The lights fade. You return to camp. Don't tell anyone. Soon you hear talk of ghosts, of faces in the well, of footsteps above empty lofts. One soldier swears he saw Jaren walking between the huts, laughing, mouth open, too wide. Jaren's been gone for weeks. Still, you listen. You start sleeping with a dagger under your chin, not for protection. For certainty. A captain tries to hold drills. Marshes, weapon maintenance. No one shows. They sit near the fires, staring into smoke like it might tell them something. The captain goes quiet after that. Stops giving orders. Starts carving something into the handle of his sword. A spiral, just like the ones on the keep walls. A group of soldiers builds a shrine. Not to any saint you know. Bones stacked in a circle. Twine wrapped in knots. They light candles that don't flicker. They chant softly. Not Latin. Not words. Just sounds. It doesn't feel threatening. Just necessary. As if not doing it would invite something worse. You start seeing marks on your own skin. Tiny scratches that appear overnight. Spirals. Circles. Once a name. You try to scrub it off. It bleeds. The priest is still missing. No replacement is sent. One night you dream of the keep again. But it's no longer empty. It's alive. Breathing. The walls pulse like veins. The throne room filled with figures who sway, whispering things your mind won't translate. In the cradle, the helmet rises, floating. It turns toward you. You wake with blood on your hands. You're not the only one. A soldier carves his own face with a rock. Says it doesn't belong to him anymore. Another walks into the forest naked. Returns at dawn, covered in feathers. Doesn't speak. Doesn't blink. The captains do nothing. They've begun sitting together at night. Silent. Staring at the stars. You try to write a letter to someone, anyone. But the words fail. The pen shakes. Your thoughts bend in on themselves. You look at the parchment. It's covered in spirals. You don't remember drawing them? The wind carries whispers now. Names, not yours. Not anyone still here. You press cloth in your ears. It helps, sometimes. But when you sleep, the dreams return. Louder. Closer. The helmet speaks. Not in words, but in hunger. You wake one night with frost on your skin, though the fire burns beside you. Your breath comes in clouds. Across from you, a soldier stares. You ask if he's all right. He smiles too slowly. We brought it with us, he says. It followed the blood trail. He stopped sleeping after that. The village begins to crumble, not physically, but in spirit. The huts sag. The fires dim. The ground cracks in strange places, dry even after rain. You think you hear breathing beneath your feet. One night, the well overflows not with water, but ash. You suggest moving, marching, leaving this place. The captains say there are no orders, no word from command, no roads open. You wonder if that's true, or if they simply forgot how to read maps that point away from death. You wake one morning and find half your unit gone. No signs. No blood. Just emptiness. You check the huts. Their gear remains. Their names carved into the doorposts. But the air feels different, lighter, or heavier. You can't tell anymore. You look into the forest and see the lights again. They're waiting. You think about stepping toward them. Just once. Just far enough to hear what they're offering. Because silence is no longer safety. It's invitation. You hold your breath the next night, expecting the forest to call again. It doesn't. Not with sound. Just presence. You feel it pressing at the edge of camp, like fog that forgot how to be seen. The remaining men speak less, not out of fear, but out of exhaustion. As if words are wasted now. As if language won't protect them. You understand. You've stopped talking too. The commanders vanished the following week. No announcement. No mutiny. Just gone. Their tents still stand. Bedrolls undisturbed. Weapons left behind. One even left his boots neatly by the fire. Someone jokes they walked barefoot into the woods to meet God. No one laughs. You take inventory. There are 13 of you left. Out of 60. One has taken to drawing maps of the village in charcoal, obsessively redrawing the same corners and paths again and again. Another stares at the sky for hours. He swears he can see lines being drawn between the stars, as if they're spelling something. Slowly, the shrine grows. More bones, more circles. The man who started it won't speak anymore. Just hums. At night, he lights candles and places them in the shape of an eye. Every morning they're burned to the base, though no one saw them lit. You ask him once what it means. He holds out a bone from the pile. Protection, he says. Or warning. One morning, frost covers the entire village, but not the shrine. Its ground stays warm, soft. You test it with your fingers and pull back. It pulses, as if something beneath breathes in time with your own heartbeat. You stop approaching it after that. Food runs out, not with a scream, but a whimper. One day, the storage hut is simply empty. No signs of theft. Just nothing. You catch a man chewing on leather straps. Another tries to boil his gloves. You start catching rats again. But even they're fewer now. Smarter. You feel like they're watched, not with hunger, with sympathy. You think of the chapel, of the helmet. You wonder if you left anything behind at all, or if it clung to you the moment you stepped inside. Maybe it doesn't live in places. Maybe it lives in people, waiting. You find footprints outside your hut, barefoot, small, childlike. They stop just before your door, then vanish. No drag marks, no smudge. You start sleeping in shifts, watching the door with a knife in your hand. Nothing comes. But you keep watching. One of the remaining soldiers strings up iron bells around his shelter. Says the noise keeps it away. It works for a night. Then the bells vanish. Just gone. No string, no rust, no trace. He screams until morning. Then stops. Soon men begin leaving offerings to no one. Hair, teeth, bits of parchment with words scratched in with blood. Some begin binding their fingers in cloth soaked in oil. When asked why, they say it needs reminders that we're not hollow yet. You find drawings etched into the trees' faces without mouths, eyes too wide. A symbol you saw once in the keep carved again and again, a spiral within a spiral as if it's turning inward forever. You try to carve one yourself just to understand. It bleeds, not the tree. Your finger splits without a blade. You drop the stone and don't try again. When it rains, the water smells wrong. Metallic, thick. The puddles don't reflect the sky. They reflect the chapel, no matter where you stand. You scoop one with your hands and see your face twisted and eyes hollow, mouth sewn shut. That night, one man tries to light himself on fire. Not out of madness, but purpose. It won't cross the flame, he whispers before he's doused. He survives, barely. His skin peels, but he smiles in his sleep. You avoid his eyes from then on. The ground near the shrine begins to crack, just slightly. Enough to notice. A faint humming rises from the soil. Not musical, just a low vibration. A heartbeat. Someone marks it with stones. Another begins to dig beside it, slowly, methodically, even in the cold. You ask what he's looking for. An answer, he says. You wonder what the question is. A letter arrives one day. Not delivered. Found. Rolled and tied in blue thread. Sitting in the center of the camp. No one admits placing it there. No one opens it. You do. The parchment is blank until you breathe on it. Then a single line appears. Return what was never yours. You burn the letter. It doesn't turn to ash. It folds in on itself, vanishes in your palm. You tell no one. That night, the drawings on the trees glow faintly. You watch them from your hut, the spirals pulsing like eyes trying to blink. You feel the weight of something just beyond understanding. Not a presence, a purpose. One of the men walks into the forest at dawn, naked, laughing. His laughter echoes for hours, then stops. Another man follows him, quietly, with a blade. He returns without it, doesn't explain. Your group is now down to 8. The huts decay faster now. Wood splits. Roofs cave. Time doesn't move the same. You wake one morning to find 2 suns in the sky. You blink. One vanishes. The other stays. You don't speak of it. You catch yourself speaking in your sleep. Not words, rhythmic, like the chants from the keep. You wake with blood on your tongue. You check the shrine. It's larger again. The bones have been arranged into a doorway. You dream of walking through it. Behind it is not a room. It's a field, filled with thousands of soldiers, all kneeling, heads buried in soil. The sky bleeds. The ground whispers. The helmet floats above them all, spinning slowly. It sees you. You wake screaming. No one comforts you. They dream the same now. There's talk of returning to the battlefield. Of going back to where it all started, not to fight, to finish something. You feel it too. The call, not like a voice, more like gravity. A weight pulling you to the place where your soul cracked. Someone says it aloud. Finally, we didn't survive the siege. We just delayed what came next. You believe him? You packed your things. The march begins at sunrise. 7 of you, no orders. No command, just direction. Back to the beginning, to the chapel. To the cradle. To whatever waits. Still hungry, still watching. Still yours? Ask ChatGPT. Chapter 14. The road back is not the road you remember. Trees lean differently. Paths wind where they once ran straight. Even the air tastes strange, heavier somehow, like breathing through old cloth soaked in iron. But you keep walking. Not because you believe in answers, but because questions are poison when left too long inside the mind. The 7 of you don't speak much. You move like parts of a broken clock still ticking, still turning. One man walks barefoot, Another hasn't blinked in a day. A third hums softly under his breath, a rhythm that doesn't match any song. Still, you feel safer with them than without. The forest thickens, though you don't remember it being this dense. Branches arch overhead like ribs, blocking out the sun. Light trickles through in slivers, catching motes of dust that hang too long in the air. The birds are gone. The wind doesn't move the leaves. Every step feels rehearsed, as if you're walking a memory instead of a trail. You come across a tree split down the middle, blackened, hollow. Inside it, bones, arranged in a spiral. Not large bones. Not animal. One of you reaches in, pulls out a tooth. It's still warm. You keep walking. At dusk, the fog returns. Low and thick, it hugs the ground and whispers against your boots. You hear footsteps that aren't yours. Laughter that fades the moment you turn. Eyes blink from behind trunks. Not animal, not human. You see your own face in one of them. Then it vanishes. You make camp without fire. No one suggests lighting one. You sit in silence, chewing on dried roots and bark. They don't taste like anything, just texture. Someone hums again. Someone else scratches symbols into the dirt. Circles. Always circles. In the middle of the night, the sky opens, not with stars, but with something deeper. You see shapes moving behind the darkness, like figures behind a curtain of smoke. You stare until your eyes water. Then the curtain closes. When you sleep, the dreams return. Not of the siege, of the thing beneath it. The thing that wore the war like a mask. By morning, one of the men is gone. No prints, no trail. Just an empty bedroll and his knife stabbed into the earth. None of you speak his name. You don't remember it. You march on. You reach the edge of the old battlefield by midday. But it's not what you expect. The keep is gone. Not destroyed. Gone. No rubble, no char. This grass where once stood stone. But the ground is wrong. Soft, like skin. The grass grows in spiral patterns. In the center of the field, something glints. You approach slowly. It's the helmet. The same one. Still covered in teeth. Still warm to the touch. It shouldn't be there. You left it behind. Buried it. Fled from it. And yet here it sits, waiting like a dog for its master. One of the men reaches for it. You don't stop him. He lifts it with both hands. The air tightens. His nose bleeds. His eyes roll back, but he doesn't scream. He just turns and walks toward where the chapel once stood. The ground parts for him. Literally. Soil gives way, revealing steps that spiral downward. No one questions it. You follow. The descent is long. The steps carved from stone so smooth it reflects your face, though warped and wrong. Your reflection moves a half second too slow. One man drops his torch. It vanishes before hitting the ground. The walls begin to close. The air becomes thick with incense or rot. You can't tell. At the bottom is a room, round, of course. At its center stands an altar made of bone, encircled by candles that burn with blue flame. No heat, just light. The man with the helmet places it on the altar, then kneels. Then lays flat, face down, arms stretched outward like a sacrifice without chains. A voice speaks, not aloud. Inside, not in the words, in shape. It speaks in spirals. You feel it behind your eyes, in your teeth, in the marrow of your bones. It says, you were the door. Now be the key. You fall to your knees. So do the others. It doesn't ask. It commands. You try to pray, but no words come. Only sounds. You hum a low, circular rhythm matching the others. The helmet begins to float. It spins slowly, rising until it hovers above the altar. The blue flames turn black. The walls of the chamber bleed. Not metaphor. Actual blood. It trickles down the stone, pooling at your knees. No one moves. Then a light cracks through the ceiling. But it's not sunlight. It's wrong, pulsing, alive. The helmet shatters. Not into pieces, into dust. The dust rises. Form shapes. Faces. Thousands of them. All the ones who died. All the ones you left. All the ones who died screaming your name. You scream back. Not out of fear. Out of guilt. The faces fade. The dust settles. The room calms. The blood is gone. You stand. No voice speaks. No gods appear. Just stillness. And the knowledge that you've given it what it wanted. Yourself, you climb back up the steps in silence. When you emerge, the field is gone. Now just woods. Fresh. Untouched. Like no battle ever took place. You walk back to camp. The chapel is there again. Its door wide open. The chapel shouldn't be there. It burned. It was abandoned. You left it. Yet now, as the sun, or what you think is the sun, casts long shadows across the grass, it sits intact, unscorched, its old wooden door yawning wide as if it had never closed. The smell of old wax and wet stone drifts toward you like breath. None of you question it. The moment your boots touch the chapel's threshold, the world behind you seems to still. Even the wind refuses to cross the boundary. Inside, it is exactly as it once was, and completely different. The altar stands, but it bears no cross, no relic. Instead, a basin rests there, carved from some pale stone, filled with a black liquid that reflects no light. Around the basin are 7 stools, each perfectly carved, perfectly spaced. You each take one without instruction. You sit. The man who wore the helmet is gone. You don't remember seeing him leave or enter. You just know he isn't here now. What's here is the silence. The same silence that came before the siege broke. Before the bells rang without hands, before the names were whispered at night, it is not quiet, it is a presence. One man speaks. Do we drink it? He's looking at the basin. No, says another. We already have. You feel it too. Whatever was in the keep, in the forest, in the dreams, it's not outside anymore. It's in you. Sitting there, coiled like rope, waiting for command, and yet you feel no fear. Just wait, as if your body isn't yours but borrowed. And the debt is coming due. You try to stand, but your legs don't move. Not from paralysis, from ritual. You realize your hands are on the basin's edge. The liquid ripples beneath your fingertips, though you haven't touched it. It begins to shimmer, and then it rises. A single shape lifts from the basin, an eye, not round. Not human, slit wide like a cat's, but vertical with no sclera. Just pupil. It doesn't blink. It doesn't shimmer. It watches all of you at once. You don't know how. But you know, one man begins to weep. Another laughs. Another hums that same spiral rhythm. The eye never shifts. It doesn't speak. But you hear its will, its meaning unravel in your thoughts like string pulled too tight. It says, you asked to live. We answered. You asked to win. We demanded price. It shows you visions, not as flashes, but as memories you'd forgotten. The moment you begged in the trench. The time you whispered a name you didn't know. The second your blade struck someone begging, it reveals the exchange. You gave blood. It gave silence. You gave rage. It gave victory. You gave faith. It gave shape. The war never ended, you realize. It changed form. It crawled into your bones and nested. The battlefield was never between kingdoms, but between the scene and the waiting. And the waiting has always been patient. The basin begins to drain, not down, but inward. Into the chapel floor, the eye disappears. In its place, a symbol remains, a spiral burned into the stone. At its center, a small opening. A hole, just large enough for a hand. No one moves, but one man stands. Not the strongest. Not the leader, just the first to accept. He walks to the hole and places his hand inside. His breath catches. His body convulses, but not in pain, in understanding. He pulls his hand back. It's covered in writing, not ink, flesh itself reshaped into words. He speaks them aloud. The chapel listens. The world shifts. The door slams shut. Light vanishes. Now it's just the 7 of you sealed in the sacred hollow with a language that never belonged to men. The spiral on the floor grows. It spins slowly, etched lines deepening, beginning to crack the stone beneath. You feel the floor tilt, not physically, but perceptually, like gravity now points inward. The chapel begins to sink. You feel it in your gut first, then your skin. The walls remain, the ceiling stays firm, but the space bends. You're descending again, downward, deeper, into something that isn't Earth, but memory shaped into stone. You don't scream. No one does. You just descend. When the motion stops, the chapel has changed again. The walls are now flesh-colored, veined, breathing. The altar is gone. The basin is now a pit, glowing faintly from within. The air smells like copper and candle smoke. A spiral glows at your feet. A voice, not from the eye, but from beneath, calls out one final time. Who among you leads the war inside? You look at each other. None of you answer. Then you realize none of you can. There is no leader now. You are fragments, carriers, vessels for something ancient that no longer cares about hierarchy. It only wants resonance. One man tries to run. He reaches the door. It does not open. It swallows. He vanishes into the wood like ink into parchment, not a scream. Just silence after. The rest of you remain, not by choice, but by understanding. You kneel. The spiral stops spinning. And for a brief moment, you feel peace. Not the peace of victory, but the kind that comes after surrender. The calm of a soul no longer resisting. You see the truth. The war was never between kingdoms. It was between the world above and the thing buried beneath, the memory of war itself. It needed mouths. You were willing. The pit pulses. It is ready. So are you. Ask ChatGPT. Thank you for drifting through history with us. If you enjoyed this quiet journey into the past, gently tap subscribe and let the drowsy historian be your guide whenever sleep feels far away. Until next time, rest well, dream deeper, and remember, history is never in a hurry.